All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're here for another episode of Tilton the Scales. I'm joined with the co-hosts Walter and Chet, and on with us as well is friend of the show Jose, who we haven't seen in quite some time. I feel like he was gone for Valentine's Day, and he's got all this hair growth now.
He's
Did you
grown a
get
whole
some?
ass
Did
beard
you
since he's
get?
been gone.
Yeah, did you get some youth treatments or what's been going on, Jose?
Yeah, 2025 been just kind of a try something. Well, I go a different direction. I sat there, and you go through everything. You heal when you sit down, and you're like, okay, what do I get? What I need to I need to do some things that just be different. Just do something different.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I haven't seen my hair long since before I was in the army, so I'm letting it grow. So kind of back to my youth, and then the beard thing. I never had a beard, so this is the longest my beard's ever been in my life. So.
Nice.
And then I went and got some more tattoos, and you know,
Oh, okay,
Oh,
nice.
Okay,
good for
okay, you can't
you.
bury that. What are those, and where are they? Are they appropriate?
so
Wait.
so well, they used to have my ex's name, so I had to do cover ups. So and then I have
Oh,
one here.
yeah. Nice.
I like
Very
Okay.
that.
nice.
So I kind of got
Okay.
to ask Jose, and it has nothing to do with the artwork looks great, but with the hair being a little bit overgrown, you're looking kind of shaggy, and you got tattoos. Were you incarcerated recently?
What a dick.
You're muted, or your mic came off, or something.
Maybe you just offended him, Nate.
Yeah,
You
Nate,
might have just offended him.
very offended. He's
Technical difficulties. He can't respond. I guess that was it. He went to prison. It's okay. I mean, sometimes we find ourselves there. It's not a. I know you didn't do anything wrong, other than maybe rough up a police officer
Yeah.
after they got handsy with you. But a day or two in there, it's easy to get some jailhouse ink and let your hair grow out. So
gotta survive.
all right.
Tough crowd.
Did you fix it, Jose? I'm not seeing a mic. Try disconnecting your headset and then reconnecting. I'm not really sure. I think when you lifted up your shirt, you like hit a button on your.
Oh, genius.
But still nothing. Can you hear us though? Yeah, he can hear us. Yeah, thumbs up on the.
We
He's
can fix
receiving,
this.
just
We
he
can
can't
fix
transmit. This is perfect. He can receive but not transmit. We'll let him troubleshoot that. All right. So on the docket today,
Oh, we
we're
got
gonna
Tim. Don't
start.
forget Tim. You forgot to introduce Tim.
Oh yes, Tim's here. Sorry, he's back from picking up groceries. I apologize,
One
Tim.
trip, one trip, Tim.
Welcome back, Tim.
Well, there were only 2 bags, so yeah.
Yeah.
But I carried them in one hand, so
You didn't need to tell us that. You just say yes, and like you're our hero.
it's true. Full disclosure and honesty are different.
One
That's
threat.
true. If someone asks
That's a
how
man.
many, if someone asks how many, it took both my hands. That's all. Both my hands. All right. So tonight, what we're gonna start with is I think a topic that Wally particularly had interest in. It caught my interest too. I just wasn't sure how to approach it, but we'll talk about the Ukraine and U.S. relations and how that's kind of flip flopped this week. Well, in the last few weeks, and since 47 took over, I'm not really sure. Maybe Wally, did you have a particular start point for that?
No, I just think the changes this past week have been of note, and I think a worthy of conversation. I think there's been a big pivot in the direction of the Ukraine war, of the outcome, right? But I think it's to be expected to a certain extent. I think this was a pretty well known likelihood of this occurring. I feel like Trump pretty much campaigned on it. We know where he stands in terms of all things Russia, but to come out so directly and and energetically against the Ukraine president there, I thought was kind of surprising because it's also not just a shot at the Ukraine president. I would argue it's probably more importantly a shot at NATO in the European Union, because I think that is probably the more troubling outcome. In this week, I think Ukraine and Europe are kind of hand in hand at this point, and I think that Trump has kind of said the opening, the shot across the bow as far as you better tie this up real quick because we are about to lose our support. The problem is, again, this is what you can argue, is that like, where are the origins of this? And again, a sovereign country was invaded by another country. That's its roots. And historically, and certainly over the last too many years, America has been the defender of said occasions of one country invading another. Now you can argue also, the political motivations, the fiscal motivations, because this week also, and I'm kind of jumping around all over the place, came out about the rare earth minerals and how Trump had made his what's the word I'm looking for? His offer regarding continued support militarily for signing over the rare earth minerals, right? I think it's a quagmire. It's a mess. I don't see a positive outcome here. It's going to get ugly. I think I'm more concerned with kind of the direction of our relationship with Europe than I am necessarily directly about Ukraine. But yeah, I think
the rare earth minerals. That's from the Ukraine as well. Or where the rare earth minerals?
Reports came out that he had made an offer regarding Ukraine. Apparently, Ukraine's sitting on and I don't know how. Tim, you probably know more about this than I do. But Ukraine's sitting on certain veins of rare earth minerals, the stuff we need for electronics and chips and all this other stuff that's rare.
That always seems
a lot of what we're doing politically is trying to get control of some of the countries where rare earth minerals are able to be mined still. In that he had made an offer regarding their mineral rights, basically to control the flow of the minerals out of their ground in return for continued military support.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't know as much as and Molly, I appreciate your faith in me. I don't know a whole lot about that. I did hear recently there's sort of like some sort of like renewable energy found under mountains in that area, but I don't know about the minerals as much as I probably should. So I apologize for that.
I feel like that
much to know.
I feel like that topic usually comes up in any way, shape, or form that when we're occupying or assisting another nation. Like, that conversation came up in Afghanistan, the rare minerals that were, and particularly more so the fact that it hasn't been discovered, right? Or small pockets have been discovered, but due to the just inadequacies of the economy, the inadequacies of the country specifically, like they haven't been able to recon and surveil like most of the land that they occupy, So that seems to typically always come up. And like one thing that we, I wouldn't say we missed the boat on, but when we invaded Iraq and went in for Saddam Hussein, we didn't do anything with the oil, the world's largest natural resource. We probably did the right thing, right? The bad thing or best thing for America probably would have been to do something that would be advantageous for us to capitalize on that. And we didn't. We left that resource to the country. And that's always, I feel like that's always been a contentious point or a point of contention whenever we go in and we help somebody. Like, we're spending billions of dollars in aid to the Ukraine. And we're not even, there isn't even boots on ground. We're just sending equipment, giving them equipment to fight a war that, we just don't want to be involved in, just mostly because Russia's involved. If there wasn't, again, when we talk about world powers, like when we do simulations in the Army, we have near peer adversaries, and like we make up the countries' names, but really the countries' names are China and Russia, but we call them something different when we're doing these scenarios and simulations. And same with North Korea. They have the numbers geographically. Geographic location is the same. The country isn't called South Korea, China, or Russia, but we use those same geographical locations on the globe to run simulations. So when we talk about a third peer or near peer adversary, like we don't particularly want to be involved, and we don't want to spearhead something that's going to provoke one of them either.
So
Just
Nate, when you say, I don't think we made a mistake in Iraq, because I think what ended up happening, what America is very good at, what we are very good at, is there's conflict. We swoop in, we find a way to somehow mediate that conflict. And maybe mediate isn't the right word for Iraq. You're talking about like we're in middle school, right? Like we're talking about like the Gulf War. We
yeah,
then
that yeah.
installed
But we were there twice. We've been there twice.
right. But we're talking about installing a government that we felt was friendly to America. So we had to remember that we took the dynamite and we had to blow it up in the middle of the thing to put it out, which genius, by the way. But I think what we
You're
did
talking about the Saddam Hussein statue?
yes. No. Before Saddam Hussein statue, that was 2003 or four, I think. But during the actual war, when he started the fires and all the oil fields, we actually found a way. We figured out, let's put, not me, but someone smarter than me figured out, let's put dynamite in there. You blow up the dynamite and that might put out the fire. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, that's actually
Yes.
a pretty old.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty
Genius.
old way to do it, but it is a
Oh.
genius idea nonetheless.
Well, I thought
Yeah.
it was genius because I had never heard of it before. But what we do is then we install a friendly government that will also share the resources with us in a way that we prefer. And so I think it was a diplomatic. It was brutal, but also diplomatic. And I think I don't know that it was a mistake to do it that way.
Hmm.
That's
I mean,
Why just
whenever-
say again, there's
Great
always
Britain
going
did
to
it for
be
centuries.
yeah, there's always going to be topics of, what resources are we capitalizing on if we're going to assist you. Again, what we did wrong with Iraq and Afghanistan. Yes, did we invade the country, or did we go into the country and prevent a civil war, or interact in a civil war, pick a side that we liked, back the side that we liked, try and install government? Yes, absolutely we did, but we also left both of those countries and left millions and billions of dollars of resources and got nothing for it. So again, when I say
Gotcha.
the natural resource portion of it, it always comes up, and it should, because we don't want to be mercenaries. We don't want to be paid for this, but like, let's establish a foothold in that country. Let's get some government contracts over there to help excavate, their economy, help with their economy, but also we get a portion of that as well.
Yeah.
We did try that in Afghanistan, trying to stimulate their agricultural development within the country. Just basic things of trying to get this widget to all across the country. Like, if I can make it here, how do we make roads? How do we do everything that to get this product to every market? And again, stimulate the economy that way. And it was like it was an impossible thing to do for many reasons, but
I think
anyway,
whenever I hear Trump starting to say bombastic things like he has with the most recent what he said about Zelensky, calling him a dictator and saying they actually invaded Russia, he actually corrected that. Well, I don't know if you want to call it corrected. He restated it today, saying no, Russia did invade Ukraine. But I always feel like, okay, you're dealing with a businessman who's used to making deals. And for better or worse, I'm not making any moral claims about this, but you always get the feeling that when he starts making these bombastic claims, what he's doing is loosening up people's static positions so he can manipulate in a way that's beneficial to himself. So it unhinges people, it gets them out of their status quo, and then the negotiations can start. So I kind of feel like that might be part of what's going on. Not that Trump is like this 4D chess master or anything like that. I think he's a one-trick pony, honestly, and he takes that trick into every negotiation he goes into. And so with this most recent, I agree with you, Nate, about yeah, Ukraine. We have sent hundreds of billions of dollars or used hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer money to help fund this war. Yes, it helps us because we can fight a war with our enemy by proxy. Um, and all that, it's not like we sent pallets of cash to Ukraine. Like a lot of those defense monies were actually used with US defense contractors to make material and such. So it's not like we just sent piles of cash over there. On the other hand, it appears that like 100 billion is missing somehow. So who knows what happened there? But so from my understanding, Zelensky did initially reject or guffaw at this $500 billion mineral wealth deal. Basically, for all the mineral wealth that Ukraine extracts from the land, the United States would get a 50% cut of that until that $500 billion mark is reached. Now, I don't know. Nobody knows really what that contract will actually look like or if it will actually go through. However, you can kind of see like, okay, well, it's a little bit of a quid pro quo. We need the Trump administration is done being like the big dumb guy who just funds all the things out of his goodwill and gets nothing in return. And so I think there's something about that many Americans are like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. We've been like the prodigal son, and everyone's like, hey, can I get another $10? I just want to go play the pinball games. Like, yeah, sure. And it's like, okay, we're done with that. We're done paying 16% into NATO while everyone else is paying 1.5%. You know, we have an ocean between us and Russia. And so Europe ought to be footing this and being encouraged to put, up to 5% into their defense spending since Russia is on, they share a border with Russia. So a lot of this stuff kind of makes sense to me. But ultimately, when it comes to Trump's bombast, I think my hunch is that he's a one-trick pony, and he does this to soften people up and make people malleable so he can then move in with whatever deal he's trying to strike.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It does seem, I won't say disingenuous, but it shades of Biden pulling out of Afghanistan as far as the way that he flipped on supporting, because I mean, he was supporting Zelensky as soon as Russia was invaded, and like calling Putin a dictator, calling Putin this, and I just really think it's a bad look for us and how we treat our allies or our proverbial allies. And I don't disagree with you that he's probably positioning himself, because even without Ukraine present, he was talking to Russian people in their government. It wasn't Putin specifically, but he was talking to them and trying to negotiate a ceasefire in the Ukraine war without anybody from the Ukraine present. Now, again, a ceasefire would benefit both parties, but you would think if he's going to talk about that, he would want both parties present. Yeah. And then he can talk to both of them as opposed to talk to one, because then it does seem like now Ukraine isn't our ally. Russia is. We're trying to make Russia our ally. Like it does. It's a bad look for sure.
Both parties need some kind of off ramp so that Zelensky and Putin they save face. They're not going to go back shamefacedly to their country and be like, yeah, we took it up the butt on this one. So what do you think is or what have you heard is a viable off ramp for each side?
I mean, in all honesty, I haven't even heard anything, and I haven't looked into it. It feels like, again, it's two proud countries. One was invaded, the other was the aggressor and came into their country. And I would fault no one to stand on their ground and like no, you get out. I'm not
Yeah.
allowing, I'm not going to shake hands. You've killed innocent people on our sovereign land. Like, I'm not shaking your hand. I want every one of you to die. And if I had a nuclear weapon, to that effect. But like, that's how I would feel if I was somebody that lived in the Ukraine and also I was fighting a war. It just seems weird also because in my opinion, politically and in general, you don't want to pick a fight or provoke the people that have been fighting. Like, we have been at war for 20 plus years. We're very good at it. But now these individuals that are currently waging a war, they're getting closer to us. So there is no need for us to pick a fight or like provoke either one of those individuals. And again, definitely not a near peer adversary just because of their capabilities.
So
and
what I fail
the
to
unknown.
understand, what I fail to understand is that we've got Putin invading Ukraine for the sole purpose of becoming as large as the US. The sole purpose is to become a superpower again so that he can threaten us or be equal to us or have as much influence as us. And now we're in a situation where we've got our current president being like, that's cool. Like, I also think, by the way, for the record, because I'm not super partisan, pulling out of Afghanistan was a shit thing to do also. So I'm just going to be really clear about that. But like, what are we doing? Why are we being like, Zelensky's a dictator? I know he took it back today, Tim, and he's a one-trick pony, and that's the shit that he does. But
Yeah.
got a guy invading another country specifically to be as powerful as the US. And your response is, cool. I cannot wrap my head around that. So
well, I don't think it's as simple as wanting to be as big as the United States. I mean, you've got to address the whole NATO angle as well. Russia and NATO are very much against each other. NATO was making overtures, or Ukraine was making overtures towards NATO. Ukraine was a past part of the USSR and Russia. I mean, the history over there is so intertwined that it's not quite as simple as just wanting to be more powerful than the United States. And in fact, the area they invaded was mostly filled with Russians. So it's a very complex issue in a lot of different regards.
Oh yeah, it's extreme.
Yeah,
it's extremely complex. And then again, what we have is the basic fundamental of it for me is, again, you have what looks like the leader of the free world who was supporting one and then flips, and then it looks like he's supporting Russia, who, again, if we boil things down, Putin is a war criminal. Like, his country invaded another country, enacted war, and through war, his soldiers, but probably both soldiers, you might even be able to call both sides, both presidents, war criminals, but both armies are probably conducting war crimes as we know it. Not right now, but of course there have been some war crimes pushed against Russia, and there's going to be some trials, etc. But when we look at it just on that basis, like, Putin is a war criminal, and there isn't anybody in Russia that would argue, or excuse me, Europe, that would argue that. Like, they all agree. So for us,
but right, like, you can't be surprised by this, right?
No, I'm not. I'm surprised again that
Putin's affinity towards Trump is pretty well established at this point. And I don't think I think it's a very predictable path that he was going to pull back support from Ukraine and put it towards Russia. Like, I mean, I'm not surprised by it. I think this was an expected outcome.
I don't remember Trump supporting Putin invading Ukraine when it happened.
I'm not even talking about that issue in particular. I'm talking about the relationship between Putin and Trump generally. I think that there has long been concerns from at least the liberal side of our country regarding Putin's roots into Trump and the relationship between the two of them and what influence one may have over the other. And his pretty vocal and frequent support of multiple parts of the Russian political and Putin's political power. I think that I don't think this isn't a surprise. This can't be a surprise. It's not a surprise to me. I don't think it's a surprising outcome in any capacity.
It's not. And look at what Mike Pence. It's not just the liberal side. So I hear you about liberal, of course, but liberals hate
You're
Trump.
right.
Liberals hate Trump, and conservatives hate Obama or Biden, whatever. That's all normal. We all get that. But like Mike Pence, who's like the Christian savior, was like, we need to stop this. This is not okay. Like,
what's this? When you say this, what do you mean?
Looking at Putin and being like, let's ally with him. Like it is clear the guy can't be trusted. It is clear he's a sociopath. It is clear the man will say whatever he needs to say to get into your good graces. And I think that Pence, I wish I could. I don't have the access to do it, but Nate, can you find the quote from Mike Pence about this whole situation and what he said?
No.
Fair enough.
I don't see Trump ingratiating himself to Putin.
No.
I mean, no. I think I'm viewing this through what I said before is Trump being a businessman. All Trump cares about is W's. He wants to rack up W's.
Fair.
And a W in Ukraine would be ending, or in the conflict would be ending the war, which means that likely Russia is going to keep Donbass because there's no way that Putin is going to leave otherwise. He needs to have some carrot. So I think I personally see this all as a negotiation tactic. I don't think he's ingratiating himself. I think the whole Russia hoax thing was touted by all the people who are currently calling Trump out on fake news when they boasted of this thing for 4 years and it turned into a giant nothing burger. So I don't see any.
Clarify that. What do you mean? Calling him out for 4 years on what? That became a giant.
Oh, don't you remember the Trump
The Russia
hoax
dossier?
thing? Yeah,
Oh,
Russia dossier,
yep, got it. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I think the I mean, it's got to end somehow, right? And the thing that I appreciate is like at least something's moving forward. You know, the status quo ante is being broken from this endless buckets of cash that we're just spending on Ukraine, and it can't just be an endless war. There needs to be some kind of off ramp, and in order that to happen.
I guess where I'll push back a little bit is when you say he doesn't ingratiate himself towards Putin. When he's openly attacked Zelensky this week about not having elections, like, oh, it's like they're in the middle of a war, not having elections, like this, he's a dictator. When can you say that the truly last open election Russia was? I don't think it's been since Putin's been in power, right? Like he kills his opposition. He openly and publicly assassinates his opposition or throws them in the gulag and they end up dying in there, right? So it's not like, I mean, it's tough to say. It goes back to Nate's point about the war criminal. Like this is a really, really horrible dude.
He is a horrible dude.
If it appears that we're supporting or trying to again create an alliance with them as opposed to Ukraine, then it just there's something off about it.
It's not good.
We're standing on
really not good.
We're standing on shaky ground. There isn't. That's not where we should stand. It's not it. And it goes back to Tim's point about. I hope that he is like repositioning or trying to get people to shuffle their feet to set them up for negotiations and loosen things up. I just don't like that look. Like I said, but I do agree also that like. When we go back to when, yes, Putin and Trump did have a fairly good, I wouldn't call it friendship, whatever you want to call it. They had a good relationship prior to Ukraine. And then when he invaded Ukraine, I feel like that relationship it deteriorated, or we didn't see it because countries were at war, and he's not gonna go visit somebody that,
right.
Yeah. So but I don't think based off of that, I feel like prior to the Ukraine war, we were trying to become, allies with Russia and trying to get them to join NATO. I think that was the intent
Well,
with
well,
how
I,
Trump
like,
was approaching it.
yeah, what's interesting to think about is what's Russia's on its way out. I mean, I don't think there's another way to see it. Their demographics are abysmal. They're in a death spiral. Based on what numbers you choose to look at, Ukraine claims that they've killed over 800,000 Russian
Yes.
soldiers. Right now, that's what Ukraine says, right? Russia says they've lost like 5,000. If you take the average of the two, you're looking at maybe 4,500, 4,000 people that have 100,000 people, Russians that have died. But anyway, already they were in a death spiral with their demographics. So the question is, how long is it going to take before China's like, man, Siberia is pretty open and vast, and you don't have a lot of means to take care of that. So I think we'll just test the waters. I wonder if that's going to happen.
Well, I think it will. I mean, there's always global politics, right? That makes sense. So
Yeah, China seems to be a rather unscrupulous in certain cases.
you think? Yeah. So I also see, like, in any case, depending on the leader you have, especially if it's a dictatorship, we're talking about alphas. And who doesn't want to be the top dog? If you're an alpha, which I would argue, I think every one of us in our own way are, but we've all, I think, matured and learned like how to work with one another because, that's what we do. But if you're an alpha and you run a country and you truly believe, like, wow, I was born to do this, of course you're going to test the waters. America over there, they think they're the best. Let me show them something. Of course you will. So Tim, I think you're right on. Like, everybody now is going to test the waters because of what we're seeing over the past few years. And that's Biden's fault as much as it is Trump's. Like, we have just not been strong. We have not been as strong as we should be for quite a while now.
Yeah. Agreed.
What? We agree?
Look
We
at that.
agreed. You're wearing your white agreement sweatshirt. I like that.
Am I? Oh, my wedding agreement sweatshirt? Nice. I like it. Next week I'll wear my my DX shirt, and then we're definitely on the same page.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're back.
Okay.
Yeah, you're back. Jose,
Yeah.
what's up?
Yeah, I just switched to my phone. I just got off the computer. I don't know what was going on.
Jose, by the way, can I just say this to you? You are very muscular and much stronger than me, and I appreciate that.
Well,
I would never wear that T-shirt.
You use this muscle, not this one. Huh?
It's that old man strength. It's that old man strength.
I love it.
Did you get a
But we
new
all-
tattoo
but
on
we
your
all look
right
small
arm?
next to Nate. I mean, Tim's got a buff over there too. So
No,
Yeah,
Tim
he
looks
is.
good.
Yeah.
Tim looks good. He always has.
What?
Yeah.
What did you get a new tattoo on your right arm?
on my right arm, no. Well, this one's coming to new. The coquille.
I don't remember seeing the red stripes.
Oh no, that's right. That's the. I've had this couple
Oh,
years.
damn.
I don't remember seeing that. I like it.
Yeah,
That's the Puerto Rican flag and the American flag, right?
yeah. They're sewn together.
That's great. I love that.
Huh.
Yeah, I've had that
Yeah, I
one.
like it.
I got that when I was living in Louisiana. Yeah, it's been around a while. It's just like because when we're up there, I'm always wearing like short sleeve shirt stuff. I'm not like walking around in tank tops or out there with no shirt on. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any hot neighbors because if they did, then I would have been up there in the summer. But
Hey,
Just
Jose,
kidding.
you're welcome up here anytime. I will find you. I will find you a lady.
Yeah.
But I'm
no,
good.
but yeah, no. But you guys, I was listening to Tim and you guys talk. I was like, and what the fact that China, they're like those vultures. They just sit around and wait for that dead carcass and they come swooping down.
They sure do.
And you go all the way back and they just come in. But I think we, when Obama said I'm going to draw a line in the sand and then Crimea was taken anyway, that was kind of the beginning of we're going to test the theory of how strong America is.
Right?
Oh.
What the fuck are we doing?
I'm glad you brought 2014 up, Jose, because that's something that I think a lot of people forget about. So this, the 1.0 was 2014.
Yeah. And that was the first, the funny thing is though, when he finally got to the point where he's like, all right, now I got to, do something. He went all in. He went all, he was like a red old Republican dropping bombs and, letting them know, hey, you're about to be obliterated off this earth. So it's kind of funny. It's like it took him having to get to there. Okay, well, I don't want to look too weak, and then Trump is just crazy. I think everybody thinks he's crazy. He's just kind of like a mad scientist. Like, I'm going to experiment and see what sticks. So,
see what happens. That's what a businessman does, right? You throw it
Yeah.
out there. Some things are going to fail. Some things are going to go well, and then you figure out over time what goes well. I think whoever said one trick pony, I think it was Tim. That's a genius thing to say because it's so true.
yeah.
If Trump had ever believed that he would become president, he never would have written The Art of the Deal.
Because everybody knows what he's going to do.
Everybody knows it now.
I don't know.
Right?
Every liberal should read that book and be like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here.
Yeah. You'd have like 5 steps ahead. But
Yeah.
also liberals, they make their own. I can't. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the third thing is there's your kind of soft left, and then you got your crazies. It's like,
Yeah, it's the soft.
and it's like
I
that
love
on the
soft.
right. You have your, I'm more of a moderate. I'm independent, but I'm more of a moderate.
Me too.
But, I see the crazy right wing and the crazy. And it's like, dude, you got to kind of come back to the middle. You guys getting way out there. Just and it's like we're just losing common sense. So,
and Jose, I think that fits into the next the piece we're talking about, which is I think in general we are more connected than we are not, all of us. But I do think we have a system in media that only shows us on the big screens that we have, which are so fun to watch sports on. But these big screens that we have only show either this crazy side this way or this crazy side this way, and there can be no in between. And I think that absolutely contributes to the madness that we see on a day-to-day basis.
That's a great transition into talking about the bias of the media that you all wanted to talk about. That's what a smooth transition.
I agree. It's crazy because you sit down. I think in general, if we sat in a room with liberals and we sat down and said, okay, well, let's see where there's probably a lot more common ground than most people think. Most people say, hey, there's sensible gun laws that we can put in effect. There's sensible rules for this. And everybody, like, okay, yeah, we can all live with that. But the media, and I had this argument with everybody. I said, we've got to stop looking back in order to move forward. I said, we're sitting here beating ourselves up about stuff. And America's the worst. We're the worst. Like, we beat ourselves up and we bash ourselves. Like we're like these like we're abusing ourselves. It's like, wait, we're the youngest country in the world, but yet we're far more advanced. We have more opportunity. We're way ahead of everybody. It's like, why are we beating ourselves up? Okay, yeah, we made some mistakes, but we also inherited a lot of those bad habits from everybody that came here. You know what I mean?
But we also inherited all the great stuff that everybody that brought here did. That's why we're the best, because so many people came from so many different places.
Yeah.
And we got the best of everything, which is why we do well. Like people aren't invading us right now. I'm not even gonna knock on wood that they're not. Like, do not fuck with us. Like, we still have that going on. And so we're talking about things happening thousands of miles away. And we have that luxury to talk about that because we're not dealing with it in person.
Yeah.
And Jose, part is media. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry,
Jose. What I think the salient point that you brought up is you said if we were to get liberals and conservatives in a room together, we would find a lot in common. And I absolutely agree. When you're in a room and in relationship with other people, you realize I have kids, you have kids. I have to feed my family. You have to feed your family. I have a mortgage. You have a mortgage, and it's a real boots on the ground, toes in the dirt kind of interaction with each other. And of course, I'm going to go on a diatribe about how we've lost interaction through social media. Of course, that bell's been rung so many times. It's true, but dovetailing that in with the mainstream media or the biased media, however you want to put it, and sort of we have our champions and our sound bites, like the trough that we go to eat our sound bites, and you have your trough that you go to eat your sound bites, and then people get together and just vomit it back up without any real understanding of what they're talking about or what worldview you're bringing to the table. So
Yeah, I can relate to that so much, Tim, because I had this huge debate with my family members and friends back home in Pennsylvania. And, we were sitting there and it was about Black History Month. I said, well, I believe the Tuskegee Airmen and the Buffalo Soldiers and all that should be taught alongside of American history in school on a daily basis. Shouldn't relegate it to 1 month. Oh, so you want to get rid of Black History Month? No, I said it should be taught as American history because it is American history. I said the other part is most of them are saying, well, we don't have any progress. And I said, well, here's the problem I have. 2 of you that argue with me are married to white women. And you've been married to white women for the last 3 decades. Have you been oppressed? Have you been denied housing? Have you been crosses burned on your yard? Have your kids not been able to go to the same school? I said, you literally live in the neighborhood with a bunch of other white people. I said, I don't understand. I said, you're Black, and you're married to white women, and your kids are mixed. Your kids are in college. You've had success. I said, but you're saying you're oppressed. I said, you understand that when your parents were alive, that if your dad would have dated a white woman, he probably it wouldn't have ended well for him. I said, so you're telling me that there's not progress, but your life in general is progress.
Yeah.
Because nobody blinks an eye. Nobody looks at you like, oh, look at that. They're just like, there's a couple, and they keep it moving. And
that's a really good point. Yeah.
And that's where I was like, and they all got mad at me like, oh, well, you don't understand. I said, and my sister, I told her, I said, my sister tried to say something to my mom. I said, listen, my mother has white skin and hazel eyes. She looks like more like a white person than she does anything else. I said, and our mother didn't have a problem going around. She does handle the English language well. So I said, I don't get your point. And she's like, oh, I said, here's the problem. You guys stick to something saying this is how it's been, but you want to deny the fact that there was Black slave owners. You want to deny the fact that African slave trade, Black people sold Black people into slavery. Yeah. You want to deny that slavery's been around as long as man's been around. It's still here today. We forgot about Bohar Curl when all those women. The people in China are essentially slaves. I said, you keep saying it's not there, but it's there. I said, if you want to get rid of everything that slaves built, then you got to get rid of the pyramids, the Sphinx, the Colosseums in Rome, and all that. I said, you can't. That's the way the world was. It's not how it is now. So let's move forward. Let's stop. Learn from it. We grew from it. I said, America was the first country that outlawed slavery. Outlawed a lot of these things that were these countries were still doing even after we were born. I said, so let's stop beating ourselves up like we invented it. Let's start holding other people accountable. And that was my issue. And so if we can get into the segue, I went on this, but yeah, it was kind of weird. But I was like, they were like all ganging up on me, and they're like, but you don't understand. I do understand. I have brown skin. I know exactly what. But I have friends, and I drive. I've been. When I was younger, I got stopped by cops and searched for no reason. Now I drive by, cop sees me, he doesn't blink an eye. I said, the world has changed. It's better than it was. Let's admit that, hey, it's better than it was 40 years ago. Better than it was 80 years ago. Better than it was 100 years ago. That was my.
That's why I show up here Friday night to get based by Jose.
I was gonna say,
hey,
I thought he made you uncomfortable, and you just dropped off. Like it made you uncomfortable, so you just got out of here.
I was wondering where Mom and Dad went. Where's Wally?
Wally's right here. Yeah.
Okay, I can't see you on my screen. I can just see the person who's talking. So
I'm just quiet.
Oh yeah, on your phone, just hit your app, and you can switch how it all works and what you see.
Yeah, you should be able to. I think it's
Cascade or something.
Up in the corner. It says View. There should be, or maybe it's a.
Listen. You're really not missing much by not seeing my face. Let's be honest.
I
think your night will be just fine without seeing my face.
My wife is the technophile in our relationship, and I have to can you just make this happen on my phone? I don't know how it works. Just do it.
Wally, it's a double-edged sword. Like, he can't see your face, but he's also not. He's not hearing those illicit tones that are your voice.
Oh yeah.
There was a passionate conversation going in. I did not want to interject. I thought it was a lot of really great things were being said. It's hard to go back to a point. Like I had a point in my head, but that was 10 points ago. And we're 10
I was gonna
past what I want to talk about. So like it doesn't make any sense for me to even jump in now.
No, that makes
when we
sense.
started-
I will say this: Tim started the segue before we got segued again into the media
Bias
and their
media.
biases. And I am a firm belief. Like I am so sick and tired of hearing about the liberal media. I am a firm believer that there is not a liberal bias. The bias is towards sensationalism and how they can make the most money and how they can rile the most people. And I think they're really good at that. And I think they do it liberally and they do it conservatively. Trump's biggest ally is the way he uses the media. I think that he won this election primarily based on how he can manipulate the media and has made a lot of money based on how he can manipulate the media. So I don't think we can sit here and say this liberal media in the traditional sense is dead. People aren't sitting down watching NBC News at 6:30 on every night over dinner, right? They're reading blogs, they're reading X, they're reading like this whole concept that media is influencing. I believe very firmly that the only bias in our media today is how they can make the most. But they're biased towards the most sensational story, the way they can piss off the most amount of people and with the greatest fell swoop. And frankly, liberals are probably more susceptible to that than most because they tend to be a little out there emotionally. So you can like say some crazy things and get thousands of them to react accordingly, and it makes money. It gets clicks. It drives engagement. It gives them money. That's what their bias is. Their bias isn't towards one party or the other. It's towards how they can get the most people to put eyes on their product.
Yeah, that would be a particularly probably lengthy but also interesting conversation as far as how we, again, when we use the term liberal, like, and I know a lot of people that are that, and you talk to them and they believe so firmly in whatever the discussion is. It's almost to a point where if it were up to them and we followed their beliefs, like it would either be socialism or dictatorship, like one of the two things. If we put those like-minded individuals at times, and again, I'm looking at the far side of it, right? But I think we all know who those people are, and we all know people in our lives, in our circle of trust, if you want to say that,
Sure.
that are very passionate about their beliefs, but at the same time, they're not willing to have a discussion and like openly engage in alternatives to those beliefs.
No, so
and even,
liberals. Let me say it because I was one back in the day.
was
Yeah, I was.
okay.
I'm more moderate now, and if you hear what I have to say, you'll understand that. So
Hold on, I got to go do something real quick. I'll be right
fair
back.
enough. And listen to Tim. Come on, that's good stuff right there.
It was. I like that.
So basically, a liberal would never want a dictatorship, never. But socialism, for sure. Like, I'm living my life. Do not disrupt my life, but I want also to have all the resources that I need. In that case, right? That's kind of what they're looking for. And if they don't get it, then they're wondering what's wrong with the world, not what have I contributed to the world that will allow me to get the things that I need. And I think liberals are misunderstood. There's no way a liberal wants a dictatorship, period. Sorry, Nick, Wally, go ahead.
No. I guess I disagree. I don't know when liberal became such like a negative word. And this goes back to my like there being no like liberal is now like excommunicated. Like liberal is a dirty word, I think, to mainstream media, mainstream America. Even in this context, we were kind of made the whole idea of liberal as a negative. I don't necessarily think it is. I think that through the liberal ideology that there's a lot of good has come to this. It's a necessary yin and yang. Conservative without liberal, there'd be no conservative. Without conservative, there'd be no liberal. Like you kind of need those polarizing opposites. And to your point about liberals being unwilling to waver and communicate, you could make the exact same argument about MAGA, right? Like
For sure.
only the other side of it. They're unwilling to communicate. They're unwilling to negotiate or mediate. Yeah, I guess I disagree with the whole premise that liberal's a bad word. I don't think it is.
Well, one thing I will say is thank God we live in America and we don't have to be on the far left or the far right, and we are somewhere in the middle, at least when it comes to most things. So
I just want to clarify, you're saying liberal as opposed to libertarian, correct? Or are you
Liberal,
using
yeah.
those
Yeah,
synonyms?
were we saying libertarian? I was saying liberal. I was saying
I just
liberal.
want to make sure you're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I misunderstand what you guys were talking about? Were you talking about
No,
libertarian?
just
No,
the way
I
Chet was
was-
talking about it made me think it was libertarian, and you seemed like you're
Okay.
talking about liberal. So I just wanted to make.
But I would almost say that someone that is on the far spectrum, the extreme spectrum of being a liberal could be a libertarian. Like, I mean, it's not semantics, but
Hate libertarians.
What's
I
that?
say libertarians are more
I said
towards the middle.
liberals hate libertarians.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that New Hampshire is the repository of libertarians in the nation.
It is.
You're not
It's
wrong.
a whole free state movement.
bunch of
Yeah,
fanboys,
that is core
bunch of
libertarian.
fanboys up there.
Yeah,
They
that's one
moved-
thing I miss.
There's a whole movement. Since you guys moved out of New Hampshire, we've had this whole movement here called the Free State Movement. Are you guys
Oh
familiar?
yeah.
No, tell me about it.
Where the libertarians have put out the call to come over, take over New Hampshire specifically, and it's called the Free State Movement, where they're anti-government. They're trying to take over towns. We have a large number of them in the state. New Hampshire has a ridiculously fucking large government, like in terms of like the representatives and stuff. It's just so many. It's so stupid, and they don't pay them any money. So it's all retarees and unemployed people. It's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life.
So they're coming into towns and taking it over.
No, they've been coming for 20 years. And they move into towns and they go to towns where there's no real political engagement. And like in one town, because nobody showed up, they slashed the school budget by 70%.
Oh my God.
People are like, what are you doing? Like they don't want government oversight. They want the government to leave the fuck alone. They moved to New Hampshire so that because they feel like we are one of the more libertarian minded, which is probably true, frankly.
Yeah. Well, live free or die, man. I mean, that's a
Live free or die.
Or die.
We mean that shit. We mean
Yeah.
that shit.
I'm actually more sympathetic. My beliefs, conservatism lines up more with my beliefs. But if I were to like call myself something, I would call myself a theological libertarian.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, can I get back to the news thing for a sec?
Please.
So I was looking this up after you were talking about what we're going to discuss, and I was just the first thing is like what. Well, Wally, you said that no one's turning on the CB, that it's 6 o'clock news, and of course that's true. But all of these outlets have online reaches, far reaches, and so yes, it's true. No one's really tuning in, but they also have a huge online presence. So I think they still do these sort of mainstream or legacy media still do have quite a big reach. And so I
It's
actually
about
looked
market
up.
share, though, right? They have more competition. Like so does Joe Rogan.
Sure,
So does
yeah, yeah.
InfoWars. So you know
Absolutely.
what I
I'm
mean?
activate.
Yeah.
Yep. All of it.
I was looking up a Pew Research poll. Is 2021. It just was basically the top, what is it, 10 or 12 mainstream media sites, and there's a questionnaire: is this mainstream, based on polls of Americans, and what is not mainstream. So the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The first 8 there's a majority of people who think they are considered mainstream media, and then it kind of flips and people think they're not. So I'll just list the top 8. ABC News, CNN, New York Times, MSNBC, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, Huffington Post. Does anyone of those that I mentioned would you automatically populate those in one side or another in your mind? ABC News, CNN, New York Times, MSNBC, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, Huffington Post.
It feels like they're all on the East Coast or Midwest East Coast side. Not to say that yes, Fox News has locations in LA and all that, but I feel like headquarters wise, where they originated, it's all almost East Coast and like Midwest.
Would you put them in more
I don't even know
conservative or liberal camps?
Oh, easy. I can do that. MSNBC, I would consider more liberal. CNN, more liberal. Fox News, super right. The rest of them I can't say because I don't watch enough or consume enough to know for sure. But yeah, I can answer that question pretty easily. Yeah, on those 3.
Okay.
Am I about to get schooled, Tim? Just give me.
Would you say that you just answered that?
Well,
I was
no,
actually looking to see where Huffington Post was based on.
Huffington Post is liberal.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, Huffington Post I would put left, New York Post right, Wall Street Journal, they're pretty
Right.
center, I think, center right, except their opinion column is extreme left. Fox News right, and then I would put MSNBC, New York Times, CNN, and ABC News on the left. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think that the mainstream media, at least the past 4 years and longer, has been leaning or strongly pulled to the left. But to Wally's point, one of the things that I think the Trump administration has done well is they opened up their doors to a lot of these social media influencers, like popular bloggers, some of the smaller news outlets and it's just packed. I don't know if you've seen a picture of the White House press briefings, but they're just wall to wall, elbow to elbow. You can barely raise your hand, packed with news outlets. And so, there's sort of the idea that Trump might be squashing free speech with the AP press, which you can talk about in a second. But the fact that he is opening up, the White House is opening up to so many more media outlets and to the places where people are actually going, like these smaller guys, Newsmax and places on the left and Daily Wire and things like that, which clearly have biases, but is just opening up to getting it out of the hands of sort of the legacy media. And personally, I think it's like if you're witnessing something, the more eyewitnesses you have to something, the better a holistic understanding of something you actually have. And so as opposed to 4 or 5 people who witness something, you have 20 people. Well, all of a sudden you have a much more robust viewpoints of what's actually happening. And so I think that the Trump administration's opening the doors to a wide variety of news outlets is actually a boon for them and a boon for the country, because we can see these perspectives from what's happening from a variety of perspectives.
Let me ask you this. Is the implication that the Biden administration was not open to those people, or they weren't invited into the press room?
No, I think that I think it's something that the Biden administration clearly allowed lots of people in the press room, and it was just sort of status quo. I don't think that was I think it was fine, but I think what the Trump administration has done is open the doors to all of these like little teeny little news outlets, or comparatively, and I think that's.
Well, I could also propose that it would be because, again, he drives clicks, right? Trump is we talk about he's an outrage farmer. Like he's very good at mining outrage, and I think he knows exactly what to say. So he's going to give you much more clippable, posted on your site drive clicks than Biden ever would, right? Because he says crazy shit every time you put a microphone in front of him.
So what's your point there?
My point is that's what's driving like you say he's opening doors. I'm saying that the people are there because he's going to say crazy shit every time you put a microphone in front of him. It's not like they're doing anything different. They just put a guy in front of a camera who's going to say crazy shit. So people are going to tune in because he's going to say crazy shit. That's what's driving. That's what's bringing people into the.
I think you're missing the point. You're telling me that news outlets, when offered to come into the White House press briefing, would only do so if they have a president who's going to say something crazy?
I don't think. Do you think they're being invited, or do you think they asked to come in?
They're being invited.
What I'm saying is that, like, I think anyone can go to if you're a media outlet, you say, "Hey, I'd like to go to that briefing." Are you saying the Biden administration was turning people away from said briefings? I don't think they were. I'm just saying that Trump says crazy shit, so people want to go see him speak, and that's what's driving the numbers.
So this is something that we probably would need to verify, and I don't have that information. But I think it might just be a new an innovative way to promote different viewpoints. I don't know that the Biden administration, for example, was like, no, we don't want these small guys in here. Let's keep them out. It just maybe wasn't even on the radar. But with, as I forget who said it, but Trump going on to Rogan, and I think that was actually Barron Trump's suggestion to his father.
That's what Donald was saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's actually just opening the doors to, like, oh, by the way, people don't get their news from CNN anymore or ABC. I mean, there's some that do, but there's so many more viewpoints that are opening up, and it's democratizing the news, and I think a good way. And so I think I don't think that that's a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing either, but I don't think that's exclusive to Trump. I think Kamala tried to do the same thing. I mean, she went on that Call Her Daddy podcast and got slammed for it, but it was the second side of the same coin, right? Trump went on the full send. He went on with an Elk Boys. Like, it's the same goddamn thing, just catering to a different audience.
Okay, I accept your point. I concede. She certainly did try, and albeit a poorly timed and maybe chosen platform, but yes, you're right. Yeah. But inviting them into the White House is, I think, a different level. Going on to someone's podcast is one thing, but opening the doors and inviting some people in, I think, is a different set. But anyway.
I think one of the best things Trump did was go on people's podcasts. I don't know if you saw when he went on, what was the name of that golfer? Bryson DeChambeau has a fantastic series where he has like a 9-hole golf run with people. And Trump went on there, and damn it, I don't care what you think of Trump politically, and I'm not a fan. If you don't come out of there liking him, then I don't know what to tell you. He came out likable. It was it was humanizing, and I think that's where the long form sit downs. Like, usually we get clips, we get like little snippets. Like, to sit down with Rogan for 3 hours. It is a different style, and it's much more inviting, and I think it's a much more telling about the candidates.
Yeah, I've enjoyed awesome.
I've enjoyed it a great deal.
Awesome.
I think it's Bryson. Was it Bryson DeChambeau? I can't remember the name of the golfer. It might be Bryson DeChambeau. I don't remember. But it's worth it. It's worth the watch if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I've watched it a couple times. But and again, but prior to that was part of my suggestion of how do we inject, again, more followers, more people that are politically in tune to what's going on. It's not, I don't think that, Donald Trump and anybody running for president should sit down and do a 3-hour interview with every blogger and every podcaster. But I do think that there should be, like we talked about before, when there's the man, why am I losing my train of thought? The presidential debate. There we go. The presidential nominee debates. Like, why not have Joe Rogan there? Why not have, all these types of different bloggers? And it's not because he did an interview with Trump, but like get people involved that have, 2 to 3 million viewers, and they can influence those people, and just have them streaming it, and then they can ask a question that's, we've talked about this before, they can ask a question that's already been told to the people that are in the debate. This is going to be a question, and then this is the question that so and so is going to ask, and you have different representatives, meaning the Democrat side can pick 2 or 3 bloggers that are there that are live streaming the feed. So it's not just, yes, Fox is hosting it, but it's being live streamed on several different platforms, on several different people's channels, and it can be consumed and viewed in that light. And then again, I just think that's a very good way to introduce new blood, because I mean, statistically, only 53% of Americans, according to Google, sorry, Wally, but according to Google, it's a supercomputer. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it does say, it gives me analytic data to throw out there. So 53% of Americans consume news on a daily, and from some sort of smart device. And to traverse that, like
fucking Google's telling you that.
37% of Americans watch it on news.
God damn it.
I got to throw some data out there. I can't just say.
Who takes
polls?
I can't use pronouns. I can't use pronouns.
Like, when people are citing these polls, has anybody here ever taken one of these fucking polls? Like, who takes these polls? I think it's our grandmothers who still have like landlines. Like, I don't know anyone who takes polls. They're like, we polled 1,200 people. Well, god damn it, there's however 100 million.
Wally, the next time you get a phone call from. The next time you get a phone call and it says potential spam, you need to answer that, Wally. You need to answer that.
These last 15 years politically have told us is don't fucking listen to polls.
I agree.
That was great, Wally.
So what you're saying, Wally, then is any data that I introduce or that people talk about, it's a poll.
No, specifically you.
No, it is
specifically me. Okay.
Where else are you getting data from?
If you look on Google, it's consolidating all the internet traffic, so it's a poll.
Yeah, it's true. No, absolutely, I agree. But I do feel like it's not necessarily an unbiased data point, but it is a conglomerate of the good and bad. Like it's combining all of them and finding a happy medium. So instead of us being liberal or just kidding. We're somewhere in the middle. We're Americans. We're somewhere in the middle. I'm just trying to throw data points out.
Well, what do you think about? You're familiar with what happened with the AP press?
Yeah.
Me?
Anybody? Yeah, Wally.
Yeah, I'm very familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a slippery slope. If you start living,
can you say what happened?
Yeah. So Trump decided to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. The AP press refused to acknowledge the Gulf of America as its name, and Trump said, "Well, if you don't acknowledge Trump, you're not coming in here." So basically, denied access to I don't know what was it, a press briefing or it was something or a tour of the West. It was something. It denied access to a media event because they refused to acknowledge the name Gulf of America.
Yeah,
and I think that it is that's a very concerning spot to take, because it has at least the appearance of taking what the media says, determining like you don't like what their message is, so we're not going to give you access to be able to report the news. That's so subjective and very, very dangerous.
Is that Wally? Is that Wally that's
no,
cutting out?
Wally. But I can step in.
Thank God, I'll step in. It should be Gulf of America. You know, we our naval our Navy can set up a barricade, and it just we could. It's an easy thing. We just it's an English language. Let's just change it. Like it's okay. We go to Mexico all the time, but like
Yeah.
go ahead, Wally. You cut out. What was the last thing we heard him say?
I don't know where I ended. But I was on a fucking roll. I was on a roll.
You were on a roll.
Listen, whatever you I said some really enlightening. Like it really would have pivoted the way you were looking at this issue.
You guys
really missed out.
No, you were strongly you had a strong argument for the freedom of speech, and you definitely didn't like that somebody was told that they can't be in this meeting because they don't think it's the Gulf of America.
It's a little ironic too, right?
Is that strange?
It's a little ironic.
What's ironic?
Has that happened before?
Refusing to acknowledge it, refusing to acknowledge a new name. The government says, if you've refused to acknowledge this name, then we're going to deny you access. When a large wing of that political party has issues with people deciding to have a different name and their refusal to acknowledge their different name.
Where'd you read that?
I read it in the stars.
Well, I just asked Google, and Google says that 57% of Americans think that it should be called the Gulf of America. So
Jesus Christ,
we're good. It's over. It's done. Decided.
I don't have any problem. Dude, don't confuse my stance. I don't have any problem with calling the Gulf of America. I think it's fucking hilarious, to be honest with you.
Pretty funny.
It doesn't really bother me greatly one way or the other. I'm still going to call it the Gulf of America. I still call we got a store in the main street in Til'ton that used to be called the Depot. It hasn't been called the Depot in 25 years. I'm going to call it the Depot until the day I die. It doesn't matter what the name is.
What's it called now?
It doesn't matter what you call the Gulf of Mexico. It's a fucking Gulf of Mexico until the day I die.
I mean, I do think we should there should be a line of demarcation. Like it's the Gulf of America until you get to this latitude, longitude, and then it's the Gulf of Mexico.
This is what we're talking about. This is what we're fucking talking about.
I agree.
No, here's the solution.
Technique.
I'll solve it for you.
It's a distraction technique, is all it is.
It is. It's a red herring. It's a red herring.
You libertarian conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find a happy medium.
You change it from the Gulf of America to the Gulf of the Americas. There you go. Solve the problem.
Fine. Call it whatever you fucking want.
But
call it New Franklin.
Wally's freezing up again. Can you hear us, Jose?
The Gulf of
I can
Franklin.
hear you guys. I can hear you.
Yay!
Okay,
Jose, you're back.
You can hear me?
So
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I am not a fan of Trump banning the AP from this. I feel like so there's a couple of thoughts here. One is, yes, I believe that the mainstream media, and I would put the AP press in that, they failed to acknowledge Biden's crumbling mental status for several years, despite clear evidence that everybody could see. So I feel like many, not just the AP press, but I think a lot of people in the mainstream media lost a lot of credibility. However, I think that Trump's banning the AP press it speaks more of a personal vendetta he has against them than really anything else. And I think they're actually, I just read they're suing the Trump administration for not letting them in. I think it's picking a fight that it's stupid to fight. I don't think it's repressing the freedom of speech necessarily. I just think it's stupid. I think Trump shouldn't have done it. There's 75% of the media establishments are going to take issue with something Trump says. What are you going to do? Like ban them all? So I think it's kind of a stupid thing. I think it's temporary. I think that they'll let the AP press back in, and I think I think it was just sort of like a fit he had.
Yeah, it's a fit. Because the guy makes decisions that affects all of our families, all 5 of us here. And so it's kind of important that we have an insight into what he's doing because he was an elected person. He's not a dictator or a king. He was elected. So
Why?
it's kind of important that we figure out what he's doing, why he's doing it. And he works for us. Just reminding everyone, he works for us.
And should we be concerned at all that the leader of the free world and our current U.S. president makes decisions much like a toddler? He has a tantrum, makes a decision because he's pissed off at somebody in a fit, and then like, oh God, I didn't really mean that. The next day, like, I don't know that I need that decision making at the head of this.
Well, I mean, to sit down and look at it, I mean, we had one that was non-existent the last 4 years.
Yeah, well, we went from an infant to a toddler. What are you complaining about?
Now, I would say this: everything he does he's tactical about things.
It's calculated. Yes, I agree with you.
He's pissing the AP off because he knows they're going to rile up against him, and then so many of these, they were in the status quo, they were rubbing elbows, they were, and he's just like he likes pissing people off. If he's not under your skin, he doesn't feel like he's doing it right. So. It's part of what his process. I think if you sit down and the biggest thing is just you can't get sucked in, and they get so sucked in by this guy. It's insane. Like they lose their minds, and it's funny because that's what he wants. You're giving him exactly what he wants, and if you're just like, okay, well, you know what, we're gonna send some other people in, and there's plenty of people there that they can get the story. It's just. The problem with the mainstream media in general is that they try to be first, not factual. I think that's where I sit down and let's get facts. Let's let this whole information come out. So we can get all the information. But everybody wants to be first. The crazy thing is the Ron Burgundy, the movie, that Will Ferrell's movie with Ron Burgundy kind of predicted it, like, hey, we're gonna
I have many leather-bound books. My apartment smells of mahogany,
and I want to be first. Doesn't matter about facts. Let's hit the highlights and forget all the rest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I felt. I felt like we went from Walter Cronkite and the real good ones to the Ron Burgundys of the world. Now that's what we have: a bunch of Ron Burgundys running around.
Well, Trump is political catnip.
Oh, right?
Yeah. You wiggle it in their face and everybody loses their mind, and no one can really figure out what's the pheromone that's actually making this happen.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the reason why he incites people and makes people zealous for one side or the other?
Well, I think that he wants to get people raw. I think he wants to get people excited, see what they're doing, and then he can go, okay, we can tailor it, like I want to do this, but how far do I want to go with this? So when he puts it out there, they get all bent out of shape. You get the pushback, and then he can go, okay, well now we're gonna do this, and this. You know what I mean? Like, when people want to say, oh, he's a racist, but then he made that funding for HBCUs, and he putting up these statues and all these things that he's doing. It's like, oh well, look, he's doing more than what the last 3 presidents did, not called him. So it's kind of funny that I think he just sits down and he's like, let's push some buttons, see the reaction, and see where we can go from here, and then that way we can work it that way.
I struggle with that's like an acceptable, like that's justification for his behavior. He just kind of like, it's okay because it gets results. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I expect more. It shouldn't just throw shit at a wall and see what sticks, or he mines outrage. And then, that's what has got him this far. It's effective. But, is that what's best for us? It continues to divide us as a country. He picks apart the weakest. He inflames the left. He gets the extreme right to march with him lock, stock, and barrel. It doesn't strike me as a very healthy thing for the majority of Americans.
Well, I mean, I would agree with you in a situation where all things are equal. H.L. Mencken, who's an essayist back in the early 1900s, just wrote these missives. If you should have a Mencken phase. He wrote these essays that are just off the charts, biting, and he says that democracy is people getting what they deserve, good and hard. And so, when you look at someone like Trump, is he the best of all possible presidents and the best of all possible worlds? No, but you cannot get someone who is normal and level-headed coming out of the current state of affairs in our current democratic republic. It's just not going to happen because presidents are an expression of the people who vote them in. And so, in a way, you have to sort of go upstream and look at what is it exactly that's going on in the psyche of America that brings about someone like Donald Trump. And that's really where you need to talk. And because, yeah, I agree. I mean, he's bombastic and I like a lot of stuff he's doing. I don't like some other stuff, but he is America getting what it deserves, good and hard. And so was Joe Biden, and so was the one before that.
Yeah.
So we have to and I think this kind of ties into the whole media landscape. I mean, these are all expressions of the desires of the population, right? Where we want to be fed, and it's this sort of this reciprocity between media and our desires, and there's sort of a ping pong going, but always increasing. And so we want to be titillated, and they titillate us, and we want to be more titillated. And so I don't. In a way, if you're thinking abstractly and sort of a 30,000-foot view, you have to look at the fact that Trump was voted in for a particular reason, and that reason has to do with us and what's going on psychologically and philosophically with sort of like on the ground level of America. And of course, it's a dynamic process. There's a give and take, but I think it's much more than like, yeah, Trump, this orange-haired toddler descended from on high and started dictating everything that's going to happen. No, he came up from the people. We voted him into office. And so why is that happening?
That's happening
Yeah.
because of idolatry, Tim. It's idolatry.
What?
It's not
Dude,
about, yeah, it's
You're
not
getting
about,
into my world, buddy. You're getting into the religious world.
sorry, my bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's less about the policies because people don't have time for policies and procedures anymore. People they're raising families, they're working, they're getting through their jobs. Like you said, a lot of people work 5 days a week, right? You work 3 days a week and you kill it for 12 hours, all those 3 days a week. You save lives, which respect, by the way. But at the same time, Trump had a way of being like, I can help you. I just don't think he can follow through. So idolatry, because he was a charismatic man, very charismatic, very good at sending a message, very good at saying, this is what I can do. This is what I promise you. And people believed him. And by the way, we voted him in. So whatever he does in the next 4 years, fair enough.
Yeah.
He was truly voted in. But that's
Well,
my
I just
thought
wanna
around how he
say-
got in there. Go
I
ahead,
just
sorry.
want to say that I'm going to declare this Love Friday. And we're gonna talk about how America wants it good and hard. And also, I want to say that I like where this conversation is going because I do agree that Trump has an ultimatum, like the way that he steers conversations and steers ideologies. He has a way about him. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I have an understanding about it. So it's just I am happy that we're talking about this as opposed to wondering why the leader of the free world is not saying something, is not saying this, is not doing that, is not doing this.
Good
which
point.
is I feel like what we used to be doing, you know. So I'm happy about it. I don't necessarily agree sometimes with the way he goes about it, but you know, to steer the conversation in the direction of where we want to go, which is the Doge. I just want to let's have our final comments about the current topic of conversation, and then we'll move on to the Doge and the Social Security, you know, and the fraud, waste, and abuse.
Okay, I'll go first. The last comment. I worry that if you look at it what's next, right? So if this is if Trump is a kind of a product of our current environment, what's next? Like what comes down the road? Because he's not bringing the country closer together. He's only continuing the divide further and further apart. So if he is what's current, holy hell, that's kind of bleak, because I'm very concerned with what comes next.
Yeah,
I guess that's the last thing I'll say.
my last thing I'll say, and then I actually have to go. Regrettably,
What?
because I really do want to talk about Doge, but I gotta.
I'm glad you added regrettably. I'm glad you added regrettably.
Regrettably. There's a joke by Dimitri Martin, who is a great comedian. He says that that if you were really, really thirsty, then drowning wouldn't be so bad for a little bit, because you're like, oh man, that's just feels finally I'm quenching my thirst. Okay, that's too much. And I feel like the first 3 weeks of Trump's administration, I loved the winning. But however, I was also very aware that winning can go too far, and then there, like the some of the things that stuck out to me was the Office of Faith in the White House with this, blonde female pastor, which I was like, okay, that's way too much. And so in different things coming like, okay, that's a little bit too much. Okay, maybe this is a little bit. So I feel like maybe we need to turn the faucet down a little bit and go to more like the economy rather than the DEI stuff, waste and all that.
Yeah.
I think that necessarily needs to be the next move, because if he doesn't address the economy, which is the reason why he was elected, then it's useless. I mean, the Doge stuff is kind of addressing that, but barely. I mean, so you eliminated $100 billion from the budget. Like, that's nothing. So anyway, I'm happy, but I'm also like, all right, I'm not like Chet's phrase, the idolatry of Trump. He's a fallible man. Some stuff he does is good, some stuff he does is bad. I'm all on board for the good stuff, which aligned with my particular worldview, my Christian worldview. But the stuff that is outside of those boundaries, I'm like,
I appreciate that. That's a nuanced response. I appreciate that.
That's
yeah,
wonderful. Thank you, Tim.
All right. Well, see you guys maybe next week. But I appreciate you guys having me on.
We'll be here.
All right, Tim.
All right. Bye.
See you later, Tim.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what I see when I see him, and I can see where you're coming from. I think part of the reason we got here is we've been lied to, we've been misled, and things have been. We haven't held these politicians accountable for so long that people just want accountability, and they want to know, they want to hear it out of the horse's mouth, and he's kind of the horse's mouth because he's going to put it out there. Now, I'm with Tim. There's some things I agree with him and like what he's doing. There's other things I'm like, oh, you're killing me, man. But I don't think that. I think the media.
Well, that's convenient to say now, Jose.
Well,
it's real convenient to say now.
Yeah, well, I think the media in general says they make us feel like we're more divided than we truly are. When you're walking down the street, I don't think, if you see a guy in a MAGA hat, he's not out there berating other people or pregnant people or, and you see the liberals, they're not out there throwing rocks at your car or telling you, oh, yeah, I could do it. It's not as sensationalized as they make it out to be. We live, I think we've gotten to the point where we live in these sound bites, these 15-second sound bites, and we don't look at the day-to-day and the real reality of what we're doing. So it seems worse than it are. I think with the media, they need to be, it's surprises me that the journalist school, all these schools producing these journalists are like, hey, you need to have integrity. We've lost your integrity. The people have lost faith in media. And that's where I think we're at. And I think that's where, they have to win. They have to get that trust back with the people. And,
obvious. I would say it's so obvious. You're so right. If you look at CNN on any given Thursday, right? and then you flip over to Fox, what you hear is a spin that is so wildly different on something that someone in power said. You lose faith in everything. It's hopeless. It feels fucking terrible because you're like, wait, these are the people that are telling us what's going on.
Yeah, we need Joe Friday. We need Joe
They're
Friday.
supposed to be the ones that help me make my next decision, and they don't agree. It feels chaotic, and I think everyone that truly listens understands it feels very chaotic. And that's not just Trump. That's Biden.
Yeah.
That's Trump's first term. It's Biden. That's Trump again. It is. The media has gone wild. That said, if you tell someone you can't get on your plane because they don't say the thing you want them to say.
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't agree with that at all. I'm not on board. Again, I don't agree with everything he does. To me, I'm like, okay, now you're just being petty. But I mean, somebody whoever said we need to call it the Gulf of Americas and just add the S, because then it includes both sides. I think that's a genius idea.
That's Wally.
There you go.
No,
See?
it was Tim. It was Tim.
No,
I
it was
heard
some
that
liberal.
narrative out
It
there,
was some
too.
liberal that said that. It wasn't any of anyone.
There's only one liberal on this podcast. That narrows it down.
Hey, we got one, but he's the best one out of them all.
I don't know.
Are you guys calling me a liberal? Who's a liberal?
Wally is the liberal out there.
I think I'm the only liberal on this podcast. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree.
And you
didn't say Americas. You didn't say Americas.
No, I didn't say I did. I said Tim said it. Yeah, Chet was giving me credit, and I said I didn't say it. I said Tim said it.
Look at that. He's even giving credit to the man.
No.
Not even here.
It's unlike a liberal. Yeah, it's unlike a liberal to give credit to others. Actually.
Not this liberal.
Christ.
Generalization. See, that's where we get lost.
All right. Sorry for detracting you guys, but we can move on to the Doge and the. There was a very good segue, and then the conversation 30 minutes ago took a hard left, and we started talking about news and media and. But
we had talked about that as a topic, hadn't we?
No,
we
yeah,
had texted it out. We had texted out there as a topic.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So it wasn't completely out of left field. Yeah,
no, you're right. Well, it wasn't completely out of left, but I was ready to transit. I guess for me and my train of thought, I was ready to transition once we started talking money, and then we went in a different direction. So, but we can
makes sense.
We can circle back to the Doge and the money. Again, we talked about obviously part of this is the fraud, waste, and abuse, and how the Doge is investigating and doing things to try and find a way to, again, what the Doge is, the Department of Government Efficiency, not just in how they spend money, but how they do things. I would hope that it's a two-pronged attack, right? It's how we spend and how we actually do things. Because those two things should have some sort of harmony, right? But when we, through the basis of what's been reported this week, this is Social Security Administration, it was reported there was an investigation. Over 18.9 million Americans still alive in the database were born in 1920. And again, that doesn't mean that they're actually getting benefits in Social Security, but they're actually still alive. So that means that 18.9 million Americans are over the age of 100, which is astronomical. And we know that that's not true. But again, through the investigation, it found that, as well as that there was $236 billion of improper payments reported over the 14 different agencies that encompass the Social Security Administration. And then 175 million of those, or 75% of the 236 billion, were overpayments, which were reported. And again, I'd like to see that it's not close to 100, but 74%. Somebody was overpaid. Somebody, the investigation process the system worked. I would say 74% of the time is how I translate that data, and that data did come straight from Google, Wally. So just to let you know, I'm sure you'll have something to say about that in a minute, but it's just I like that one. There's the Doge is asking hard questions. He's getting answers. So again, and if we want to look at it from a perspective of he's firing people that aren't productive, or he's firing people that don't need to be employed. Again, I'm on board with saving money. I don't care if it's 100 million or 100 billion. Like, I'm on board with saving money and using that money to be more productive. Because when we look at it again, last year, 2024, the current budget was $6.75 trillion. Like, that's an astronomical amount of money for all of us. I'm sure we can understand. I would take 0.01% of that, and I'd be happy with that. All right. But that could potentially, all that money could potentially be dispersed to all of America, and we'd all be happy. But that's not how America works, right? We got to earn and burn. So anyway, Wally, what are your thoughts on this?
So let me jump in there. Like, I think it is a good
Jump
idea.
on in.
I think the idea of cutting governmental waste is a good idea, right? Who could disagree with the idea of cutting governmental waste? I worry about the process by which you go about cutting. Determining what governmental waste is, right? Because I don't know that that's necessarily a black and white answer. It's subjective, and it's certainly politically motivated. So I think it's an argument that should be had not by one person who's politically motivated, clearly politically motivated. It should be done by a panel or a group of people that can look at this sort of thing. And I think that in short order, we will see why that should have been the case. I think that, again, right now, when it's currently happening, we are not going to see the long-term implications, which will be the ultimate issue. When you cut billions of dollars out of the U.S. government, there's going to be really essential programs that are going to be affected in ways that we don't know the ramifications of until 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And we have to be very careful before we go about doing so. It's a great idea. It's a very challenging thing to actually execute effectively or without considerable damage and considerable danger.
Yeah.
I also
You're referring
think,
to
and
the
I also
department,
maintain
the DOE?
that if the main person in charge of cutting governmental waste also holds billions of dollars in governmental contracts, then can we just say that he's going to look at his own stuff and decide to trim the fat out of that? And we just have to say, trust me, bro? Like, I think that we need to have some level of objectivity. He has not divested himself of any of his companies. He's openly and willingly running both concurrently, where he's cutting governmental waste, except for the billions of dollars you're paying me in the other hand. Like, what the fuck are we talking
That's all
about?
true. And that's all
It's
true.
a great idea. At least get somebody who's not actively being paid billions of dollars by the government to do so.
Well, let me ask you this though, before Jose, I know you want to chime in here, but don't you think when every time I Google something about the Doge, I see Elon Musk in Washington, D.C. I see Elon Musk not where his companies are. Don't you think, without saying it publicly, don't you think that some of that is already divested? Like, because again, I see him spending more time away from his companies than actually at his companies. So
I don't think you understand what divested means. Divested means he's not taking an act. So, like, he's still making all the money from this. So you could make a pretty compelling argument that he's making that he could be more effective in making his company's money by making a central role for himself in the U.S. government in funneling money toward, or not cutting, or maybe cutting
So in a
competitors.
true divestment, you want him to sell his shares in his company,
I want him
or
to
sell a
he
portion of it.
shouldn't be involved. He's the CEO. He's running all these companies. No,
So you want
like,
him
he
to
hasn't-
sell 49% of his, or have
No,
sell
put it
51%
into a
of the
blind
shares.
trust. Like, here's the problem: is I don't want a billionaire in charge of trimming governmental waste. A guy
Wally, if you let me sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
Do
but
you
if
really
you
feel like
if
what I just said is an outlandish take? Like, do you think
no, I don't
that's
think
crazy
it
to
is,
say?
but I
What's
would
your
ask you
favorite fight?
again. I'm going to ask you, even if he divested, wouldn't he still be a billionaire?
Yes,
Sure.
but then,
I guess
but then,
my
then it'd
point
be
is
less
he's not the
conflict of
right
interest.
man for the job.
Yeah, he's not the right man for the job. Easy,
So,
easy take.
so I agree with what you're saying, Wally, in a sense. And like when I saw one report, like, oh, there was one person that came out, oh, he makes $8 million a day, blah blah. My question was, well, if you were he was making $8 million a day, why did you do anything the last 4 years? Why did you wait till he's doing this to bring it out? Now,
Yeah.
do I agree that there should be an oversight committee that, when he's going through these audits, like, okay, we're going to review all your work. We do need someone. I mean, the movie Dave was hilarious, but it was interesting because he brought a friend in, and his friend audited the books, the budget, and he found money, and the people in Washington were pissed, like, oh, you found money, why are you doing this? Why are you auditing? I think, you and me both agree, we do need this audit. We do need people look into this waste. But I also believe, with you, I agree with you. We do need some kind of committee or somebody that, hey, who's checking the checker? So let's, and that's a wonderful question to ask. I think that's something that we should ask. Hey, make sure that he's not, going on politics, and he's not going on personal interest. Let's have someone check him, and then, or in the same sentence, have someone separate that maybe the other side say, hey, we want you to audit his side, all his interest, all his stuff, and that way, at least you have someone independent of him auditing, and he's not auditing himself, so to speak. You know what I mean? And I agree with you on that. Who's checking the checker, and that's what we need. We need, we need that. But some of this stuff that's been going, coming out, it's like, we've been spending money on what? It's crazy, and we got to stop being the world's, pocketbook, because
Yeah, I agree.
we got to be able to take care of our own. We got to, the sending money, nothing personal. And you sit down, there's programs that we're funding around the world, but we're not funding our own at home. That doesn't make sense. Why? We should start at home. And then if there's time or extra, then we'll send it out. And again, the whole HIV thing, I do have a family member that's HIV positive. We're giving free medicine to people in Africa, but my relative has to pay for it themselves out of their own pocket. Well, now I'm like, well, I have no problem cutting that off. That's just me personally, because it affects my family. So I sit down and say, okay, hey, you know what? I'm okay with that. Hey, let's take that money and redirect it back to the people here. Let's not have these things where let's take care of our own first, and that's not stop to, why are these other countries, this other continent, why are we maintaining their health? Shouldn't they be able to do that? Or at least
Right. So, Jose, question. I'm sorry, and this is with love and respect. You really think that Elon Musk, Nate, don't mock me.
With love,
I can't fight you.
with love and respect.
Like
with love and respect.
You really
Sorry.
think
Hand over his heart, love and respect.
Yeah, I
no.
mean,
you really think Elon Musk is the guy who's going to be empathetic and handle the issues that you're talking about?
Well, no, I don't think, I'm not, as far as like redirecting the money, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But as far as finding the money, he's written enough business contracts and enough. He knows the workings and the backhand shakes and all the shady stuff that Trump knows it too, so that they can't hide it as easy from them as some.
Yeah.
If you got a guy like, say I went to Georgetown and this, that, and I got my degrees and all this, but I've never been in my own business and had to deal with all that. And I'm not a billionaire who had to deal with these contracts with the government. I wouldn't have the expertise. He knows where they're hiding it. He knows how they're, funneling it. He knows. So I think in finding it and correcting it, I think he has a better chance of doing that than someone like just me who just went to school.
But it's because he does it though.
Yeah. So again,
he did it, so he knows how to do it.
Yeah.
Like,
What's
you
the
trust
best way
that guy?
Why do you think they have, these guys on the inside of the mob or all these other criminals? Hey, we want to get a guy on the inside so we can get that top boss, because we got to learn how the inner thing works. I mean, that's how RICO works. You get something in, and so he's basically the RICO format. So
let me ask.
We probably need a whole nother set of people. Well, we're here to say, hey, let's redirect this to where it could be helpful, at home. So I agree with you. He's not the guy to redirect the money.
Let me ask you this though, Jose. Of the things that you've heard and reported, do you see a way that those could benefit somebody like Elon Musk?
Yeah, I mean, when you sit down, you sit down. Even most of those guys are sitting there, and there's the business that we're taught in school, and then there's real world business.
Real world business, yeah.
And I'm sure that
absolutely
benefited from some of this kind of, hey, we're gonna put a little over here, a little over there, a little slush fund here. I mean, you remember being in the Army, and the $200 screwdriver. And you're like, wait a minute, that's not even a Craftsman. It's not even a brand name screwdriver. $200 for this crap. You remember that. I remember that. And it's like, okay, there's no way that's $200. So where's the rest of the money? And so whoever had those contracts, where's the rest of the money? There's somebody, but he probably has a better understanding of where that money is than I would. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And I think we got to look at, this is all part and parcel of, again, this is what Trump campaigned on. This is the core of who he is. At his core, he's a shady businessman who has inarguably fucked people over every step of the way. This is how he's got to where he's got. This is not a philanthropic history kind of his rise. This is a guy who has lied, stole, cheated his way to where he is. He was selling meme coins. A month before his inauguration, his second inauguration. He and his wife. It made hundreds of millions of dollars doing so. He was selling watches for hundreds of thousands. I mean, let's be honest about what we're talking about. So when it pertains to perceived advantages that Elon Musk might have, I don't think that's not going to this is just what we're dealing with right now. We've got an oligarchy where we've got these billionaires that are in positions of power that are going to be making decisions for us for the foreseeable future, in almost every regard. And I think we should be very concerned about that.
So, Wally, the question is, did we have oligarchy before, but they were just behind closed doors?
Yeah, probably. I think it's to a greater degree. I read some article about our food distribution system and how most Americans are fed, and it's owned by right down to the farms, owned by a very small percentage of giant corporations. And I think that we are at a point where it's becoming a significant issue again, and that there's a few people who pull a lot of purse strings and control our daily lives to a greater degree.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a new problem, though. To your point, Jose, I don't think it's a new problem.
No, I agree. Out of the shadows.
To add to what you said, Wally, about it's literally three corporations that equal 90% of the America's calorie consumption.
So scary. Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little scary, but let's look at it in layman's terms. That's also why somebody like Robert F. Kennedy was assigned to the HHA or the what's his appointment? The
By the way, he's my boss now. I don't love
yeah,
that.
but tell me what that means because it's escaping me. The
Health and Human Services.
Health and Human Services.
Yes, Health and Human Services, because we want to get somewhere in the vicinity of what Europe has, meaning every ingredient is listed on the ingredients,
Oh, I like
and
that.
and all we understand where I'm going with that. But again, we're not there yet, but that's the reason why someone was appointed in that position to get us in that direction. But to say again that that our commander in chief is a shady businessman, I'm not going to deny that he doesn't use some of those tactics, that he learned being a shady businessman. But I would like to think that the person that I voted into office, not once but twice, and the reasons why I voted him into office: one, he has more money than anyone can ever offer him. So he shouldn't be persuaded left side or right side. That's my brain and the way that I work. Does that work in the business world? I don't know, but that's how I think. So that was the reason why I voted him in the first time. The second time, it was the lesser of two evils, in my opinion. However, is a shady businessman somebody that files for bankruptcy 6 times? Is that a shady businessman? Just out of curiosity.
I think that's a symptom. I don't think that in and of itself makes him a shady businessman. I think it's a characteristic of a shady businessman.
Yeah, I would say that he used the system as it was devised. So I can't say that it's shady because he's only using the system that those lifelong politicians, people have been, and that's why I try to tell people you got to focus on your senators and congressmen, not so much on the president. Mm-hmm. There's people there who've been there for decades, 30, 40 years, and they have come up with this system. And he and all the rest of them on both sides are just manipulating the system that's created. And, they've created loopholes for their friends on both sides. So both sides, billionaires, are just, and I try to tell people these politicians, a lot of them are two sides of the same coin. Those lifelong ones, those ones that've been there 30 years. Yeah, they're two sides of the same coin. Don't think that it's a different coin.
Wait, Jose, hold on. I disagree 100%. Nancy Pelosi became a super millionaire because she was super smart with the stock market. That's all.
Oh yeah. Oh, she's
been good to me.
Super smart.
She's
smart.
Stock market whiz. Yeah.
We should all be following her. Following her.
I've been telling you guys this for 6 months.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
Wally. 8 months, Wally. 8 months. Probably closer to a year.
Isn't her husband the real estate guy? Got to sell a lot of government land.
Oh, they're all shady.
Yeah,
they're shady.
I like, again, that's where we go back to. We need term limits for them. They need to be, hey, you can only do X amount of time.
You do.
You shouldn't go in there making 100, and you know how expensive. Anybody who's been to DC knows how expensive it is. You're making $170,000 a year, which is decent money, but for DC, that's not that. You're just you're not, and you leave there a millionaire. Something's wrong with that.
But
hundreds of millionaires.
Yeah, that's on both sides. If you just stay for 10 years, you're going to be set pretty well. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's disgusting.
So we've had Jose.
We need accountability for these people.
Since you've been gone for about 4 weeks, meaning you haven't been on, but I've specifically brought up the topic of, how federal government employees, right? Like a lot of people were laid off in this last week. They were laid off because they were on a probationary period, meaning they were just hired and they're going through their probationary period, and they're not actually a federal employee. They're employed by the federal government, but they're in a hiatus, right? But I think we both know, because of what we've been through in the Army. I'm sure you had a government contracted civilian that worked in a battalion or brigade staff that worked next to you, and you're like, they're either never in the office. It's not to say that they're not doing work, but sometimes when they're told to do work, it's like that's not in my contract. It's not in the wording in my contract to do that specific job. Yeah.
The description. That's not in my PD. Yeah.
I mean, so
going all the way back to when we went to Iraq, Nate, when we were there. And I remember I came back from, Fallujah and got back to the unit. Government contractors trying to fix equipment. Manahan comes to me and was like, hey, Jose, I know you're really good at this stuff. The guy was working on it for like 5 days. He's like, he can't figure it out. It took me like 30 minutes to figure it out. I said, Mike, it's right here. And so the guy's like, oh, and I told him, and he was a retired sergeant major. I said, the problem is, you worked on old equipment. You don't know what you're doing. You just walked into this position making six figures, and you got this little manual, and you're an idiot. And he's like, you can't talk to me. I said, yeah, I can, because you are an idiot. You got the job because you were a retired sergeant major. You think that you can parade around here, but you're an idiot. It took me, I said, I literally came here, and within 30 minutes, I fixed the problem that you've worked on for 5 days. I said, because you don't understand signal flow. You're an idiot. And, First Sergeant, I can't remember his name now. The little white guy comes up to me. Oh, you can't talk to my guy. Why not? So he's a waste of money. You literally were paying this guy good money, and he can't. And he should have gave me a check because I fixed the problem. He's an idiot. And I said, I'm not going to apologize to him. And so I was just kind of like, but this is what you deal with. And I remember when I was in Hawaii, I worked in this S6, and the civilians there. I mean, you would do most of the work, hand it to them. They'd, fix one little thing on there and go, okay, yeah, we worked on this. They're like, seriously? Yeah, no, I mean, government contractors. I remember when cooks used to cook in the defects, and got them out of there, and it went downhill. The defact, and because when they were there, they were, hey, they were soldiers, so they got it. It's like your mom cooking for you, and then all of a sudden now you got this person who doesn't care, and it's like government contractors. Oh. The amount of money that they get paid was obscene. I
don't argue that. I guess my concern is like if your main course of action is cutting all probationary staff, for instance, which they seem to have done that at pretty much everything I've seen. They've cut all the probationary staff. That's not merit based. Like, you're going to lose a lot of really good talent. And I think that if you're going to look at it critically, there's a lot of tenured people that have been around for 20 years who make a hell of a lot more than that probationary staff that probably aren't able to look at things in a different manner. To speak to the updated technology is a great example that may not be able to stay up at the cutting edge, but they've been around for 20 years. So now you're cutting a guy that gets paid less. And it's not based on talent. It's based on seniority versus effectiveness. That's I like, if you're really going to truly be independent and like, it shouldn't be based solely on how long you've been employed. It should be based on how much value you provide to your employer, right?
I absolutely agree.
But
absolutely. And the funny thing is, though, Wally, it's so hard to get rid of them. Once they're in, and
I know
it's
oh my goodness,
it's so hard to get rid of them. And they fight tooth and nail because they know this is a gravy train. I'm not giving up this gravy train without a fight. So they working at the G6, I retired at a 3-star headquarters, BTCs for a 3-star general, and watching those guys, they dig their claws. They're like, and they will fight you tooth and nail, and they'll pull out every rag. They spend more time figuring out how to keep their job than they actually do their job. And and there's some good ones. Don't get me wrong. There's good ones that keep up with it and work hard, and there were some really good guys, But there's also ones that are sitting there that are collecting a check, and I'm one that I don't agree that I think you should have a 5-year window where when you get out of the military, you can't go work a federal job. That's my personal belief.
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys, there were guys that would hire, and then boom, they go out the door in uniform one day and come back in civilian GS-12, GS-13 into this job. And I'm like, that's not fair. You should have to go out into the civilian market, make your way, and then if you decide to come back, you should. I don't think you should be able to just walk out the door one day, retire, and then come back in. You know,
Can I make a counter argument to that? And I'm not qualified to do so. But who better
Then
than that
don't.
person, right? Like,
no.
But my point is,
I
like, who better? Like, isn't that the experience you need to be able to be effective in a position like that? Like federally,
Yeah.
like, wouldn't you
Well,
rather
let
have
me-
that than Wally Hall out of college? You know what I mean?
Let me
Like,
let
have a
me
guy that's come up through the system. And I don't know
Yeah,
if
let
that's
me-
I'm just curious.
I want to answer that because I do think that, like, although I don't agree with releasing, first off, the first prong of attack, or the first way that we reduce spending is we cut the individuals that are on probationary period. I don't necessarily agree with that, but what that is going to do is it is going to force the individuals that are supposed to know their job and are supposed to be able to do three different things before they get into the position that they're in. It's going to force them to actually do that. And if they're not proficient at it, if they're not good at it, then there's nothing saying that these people that we released on probationary period cannot reapply to positions that pop up on USA Jobs or whatever. So if they want to, and if they so choose to still pursue those positions, they can. But I think what it'll do, and I hope it's and again, I don't know anything about strategy from the Doge, right? But I look at it like, hey, we're gonna take out the probationary period people, and then that's gonna reduce the staff significantly, and it's gonna put pressure on those that are supposed to perform. And now I want you to perform. If we see over a 6-month period that you cannot perform, and again, let's look at it realistically. Hopefully it's those, I hope that it's those from my heart. I hope right here, Chet, right here. I hope that it's those individuals that have 20 plus years in federal service, and we can just retire them, right? They're not performing, we can retire them. And we had a conversation earlier about the Doge and how we would restructure some things. And I specifically talked about federal government employees and how, you get locked into a position. Me specifically, if I were to get a position in the federal government, let's say it's a GS9, like that's like a mid-level management position. Like, it's something that I could do very easily.
Oh, yeah.
And as long as I'm good at that, I can stay there for 20 plus years, right? But like, why would the federal government allow me to stay there? Why would I not be just like the Army? Why would I not be held to a certain standard where after a certain amount of years, I need to progress? If I don't want to progress, then the federal government is done with me.
I can answer that. There's a little thing called unions that control so much of the government employee function on the state level and a federal level.
Well, there's no federal employees are not unionized. There is that. No, they're not.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, they're not. Federal employees specifically, contractors, it's another entity, but federal employees are not unionized. They are, when what me and Jose were talking about, whatever your job description is, / it was a PPE or something to that effect. Jose, what was it called?
Your PD, your position description is what they.
Yeah, position description. Yeah, it literally outlines your job and description. And like, if the square peg doesn't fit into the square hole, then it's not, and it doesn't fall on this guy right here who gets paid GS9. It falls to somebody else. Like, let's throw it to the E6 that works on staff or whoever, right? But it's not this guy. And that's the parameters that they fall under, but it isn't unionized specifically. Walter.
So I just Googled that in Google, and I know that we've long established Google as a
no. I like that you're using it.
Google podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are pro Google.
This guy right here.
Federal employees can unionize, and many do. The largest union for federal employees are the American Federation of Government Employees and the National Federation of Federal Employees. So the federal employees do unionize.
Go ahead. Keep
Go ahead.
going.
No, please.
No, go ahead. No, you finish your point with your union. I'm sorry.
My point is that it's very difficult from a managerial perspective to weed out under achieving employees when the union's involved. It's almost impossible. They've infiltrated every level of state government here in New Hampshire, and to try to get somebody like for attendance issues or performance issues, you've got to absolutely jump through hoops, and it's a multi-year process. And it's a systemic issue. And from the looks of that, federal employees are also unionized. And I promise you, it's not as easy as just weeding out under people that have been there 15 years. Good fucking luck getting rid of that.
I would say this that with Wally, and to jump on that, what Wally's saying is, you add in the nepotism factor, and then you add in the lazy people. You know, how many, and Nate, you can speak to this. You were at probably the highest level, and you're in Army. You sitting down and you're dealing with how many NCOs didn't want to do their quarterly counselings, didn't want to do their monthly counselings, or they would pencil whip it and just generic. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So you're never really getting the true evaluations. And I would always get people either liked working for me or hated working for me, because I was one that I did my job. I gave guys 3/2, and they were like, "Oh, you're ruining my career." I said, "No, I just documented what you did. You ruined your career." And I literally would have colonels and sergeant majors tell me, "You ruined this guy's career." I'm like, "No, all I did was document his behavior." And he got
tell us what you mean by 3/2.
A rating is like, basically your potential and then what you actually did. So I would say, your potential, I gave you your potential, you have, out of a rating out of 5. I would say your potential is a 3. You're kind of in the middle. You're not going to be great. You're not going to be bad. And a 2 is that your job performance is just bad. You're the lower end of the spectrum versus your peers. And so, and a lot of guys would write their own NCRs and people just sign off on it. There was a lot of 1/1s, and there was guys like you or not, or and I knew it, and it's part of the reason why I didn't rise in ranks, because I was not. I would call it like I see it, and people would get mad at me, and I would say, "Hey, I don't really care," but I made sure that I took care of my good people, so they always got pushed forward. So I would hope that I put a lot of good people forward, and kind of springboarded off of me. I was willing to take that bullet so I can get good people up and bad people held back. But you know it, Nate. You've seen the guy, who, okay, I'm going to get good for the PT test, but I'm not going to do anything else. But I'm going to write down, and his boss is too lazy to actually document all the turd stuff he does, and he gets away. You were in long enough to know. You've seen plenty of that. So
yeah, for sure,
employees are just as, if not worse, because they try to ingrate. And when I worked in 3-star, they ingratiate themselves with the people they knew. These are the people that if they actually do their job and document me, so they did what they needed to do, but they really didn't do all their stuff. So with Wally and if they are unionized, it's even worse.
Yeah. I say that to say again, if we're getting rid of the probationary people, then we're wanting efficiency across the board. And I hope, again, we understand that through ratings and through evaluations, that's what's determining our efficiency, right? And that it's the same across the federal government world. It's just called a different thing.
Oh yeah.
So I hope that through doing this, we discover in the next 6 months, we discover those individuals that are efficient at their job, and those that aren't, I do hope that they don't have 15 years. I hope that they have 20 years, and we're asking them to take their retirement, get out of here, and then we're going to promote the guy that's underneath you, and then we're going to bring in more of the probationary period people. I hope that's the way that it goes. It seems logical that that's the way that it should go. And probably because it seems logical, it probably won't go in that direction, right? Because it's the government. But we are talking about the Doge, and we are talking about trying to create some sort of government efficiency. And I feel like on the federal side specifically, because we've had this conversation before, Chet and Wally, who's on a pee break apparently. but we've talked about again, like, how do we, I know specifically there are people that you got 20 years, 20 years in federal service. You're still churning and earning and burning. But are you efficient? Like, take the retirement and get out of here. To be politically correct, that's how I say it. But like, I'm sorry, but you know, if you're a former federal government employee who's collecting a pension like myself, and I do 20 more years on the federal side, and I'm now 65, like, what am I doing? Like, take the money, take the retirement, and get out of here. Like, let somebody else earn and burn that maybe didn't serve in the military. It doesn't matter. But like, again, let's keep the fresh perspective churning and burning. So more so than I'm grinding and you know, I'm 70 years old and I got 35 years in federal service. Like, no, let's retire that dude. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's hard. I think for a lot of them, they live beyond they live to buy stuff. So then they're forced to keep working. So that's the American way.
I don't disagree with that, but that's again, they can go get a job somewhere else.
I agree.
Just not with the federal government. That's all. Like, I don't have anything against them wanting to work, be a productive member of society for sure. But don't rest your laurels on coming to work every day and giving the bottom line. You know, I want you to, regardless, if it were me that ran the business, right? I want your best performance every day. When you come in and stop giving me your best performance, I'm sorry. You need to give me a reason. What if it's life reasons? I get that. Like that, you know, cool. But if you're done giving me your best performance, then I'm moving on and I'm going to find somebody that will give me that, you know? Like, it's a competitive market, whether it's the civilian side or federal government side. Like, let's bring in people that want to work, that love doing what they do.
I agree with you. Chet?
Wally,
I think it's subjective, right? Like,
everything's subjective with you. Everything's subjective with you,
It is
Wally.
subjective. Success is subjective, in the means by which you achieve that success can also come in a different manner. So I think that if you look at things from an absolute, like, you're not performing your route, you miss the human side of things. And you mentioned life events and kind of gloss over it.
Wally,
but the reality is that rarely is like life a straight projection right up like that, right? There's peaks and there's valleys, there's ups and there's downs. And I think that when you lose the human side of being a manager and the human side of leading people, you're missing a large portion of what's going to keep them wanting to come back to your respective company. You can just continue to look as
don't you dare dehumanize me, Wally. Don't dehumanize me.
You dehumanized us. It's all about
Wally. I do say things in a general form, but I definitely understand that there is a one-on-one that would be like, you know, I'm not going to fire this person outright. I'm going to go to their supervisor and ask them, hey, what's going on with this individual? What's like, have you talked to them? Have you had conversations with them about what's going on in their life? Of course. But I'm also going to look at the last 6 months to a year of performance evaluations and wonder what's going on with this individual. If those performance evaluations are across the board terrible / mediocre, right? I don't want mediocre. I want somebody that's going to go the extra mile. But that is also, don't dehumanize me, because I am the guy, hand to heart. I am the guy that would absolutely not want to fire somebody because they're supporting 2 kids and a wife at home. Like, that's not what I want to do. But I do want to make sure that corrective measures are put in place. And now we're on a probationary for a federal employee. This is what it's called. They're now on a probationary period, or what's the term, Jose? Maybe you know it. It's a performance enhancement evaluation
performance
process.
improvement plan.
Yes, exactly. Something to that effect, right? Like nailed it. But anyway,
I mean, yeah.
hold on. I just
Trust me.
Googled it.
This
Do you
goes
want to
from a
know
guy,
what the
listen,
answer is?
I'm not anti-firing. I have fired dozens of people in my career. Unfortunately, I can't go into public without bumping into somebody.
Dozens? That's it? Dozens?
I mean, dozens. You can get up to like 60, 70 people with dozens.
Well, I agree, but I would hope that I want to hear you say
would hope?
hundreds. Hundreds. I want to
Hundreds of
see
people?
you when
Oh
you
my
say
God.
hundreds, then you're in my territory because I've wanted to fire hundreds of people.
You fired hundreds of people.
No, I've wanted to, but I can't.
Well, that
It's the
doesn't matter
army.
for
You don't
shit.
fire people. You don't actually fire people.
So what the fuck good are the evaluations? If you can't fire anybody, why are
They
you
just
evaluating
stop
their
them from
performance?
getting promoted. It stops them from
Yeah.
getting promoted.
Technically, stop them from getting promoted, which then they hit their time and they have to get out, or them from reenlistment. Say, you know what, you're just not cutting it, and you can put a bar in their reenlistment and stuff like that.
Oh, plenty of bars, plenty of bars, plenty of non-promotions, but
you have to be dedicated and write a lot of counselings, and then we're gonna do counseling
hundreds
going on. Then you got to do corrective actions, and then you got to come back after the corrective action and go, okay, was the corrective action correct, and was it effective? Okay, if not, then let's go one more time, and then if it doesn't work again, then you can kind of get rid of it.
How long does that take?
Usually about 6 months to a year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a process. It that's why when he says he wishes he could fire, and sometimes guys will PCS and leave, and they're like, "Oh, I'm glad I got out of here with skin my teeth," because he was about to put me to the streets, And I put a couple guys to the streets. I told him, I said, I will work night and day, and I will counsel you every second so I can put you out, and I did, and they were just like, I can't believe you did it. I was like, you don't understand. When I focus in, it's over.
Yeah, and they had their chance. They had their chance before it got to that point. They had evaluations that said you need to do this, this, and this. And
so can I ask you this?
No, you can't.
Can that system be manipulated by if there's an interpersonal issue, meaning like your superior officer doesn't like you for whatever reason? Yeah. Can they then manufacture that timeline to get you on the streets too?
They can try, but the problem is you have to go run it through JAG. So JAG, Judge Advocate General, they'll go in there and say, okay, let's review this. And then if you want to fight it, then they'll have to go and do a whole board and this, that. And you can literally ask to be moved to another company.
And I would also say in between there's actually a good NCO that is saying like what they're doing is wrong. And this is what you need to do to correct it. We don't want to go in this route. We want to go in this route. And like, technically that's how it should go. But
have either of you run into a situation where there's is it superior officer, commanding officer? What's your boss called?
Commanding officer.
You can either a senior or officer.
Or had you in their crosshairs?
I will say I had one that didn't like me. He wasn't my direct supervisor, but he was upset that I was running a platoon. He wanted it, and I was like, no, can't have it. And he was just upset. But my commander liked me so much that he was like, no, he's keeping it. You can wait. And then
so it didn't impact your career at all. It didn't
Well, it did a little bit because later on, I ended up having to work for him. So he ended up writing my NCOR. So he couldn't write anything bad about me. So he just gave me what we would call generic bullets. He said he did good, And so when they looked at it, they're like, wait a minute, you were awesome. And then this 1 year you were just average. So a lot of the people would look at me and would ask me and call me and say, and I was like, but me and him didn't get along. We just, and I told him so. I just told him, I said, you're a turd. Yeah, you checked all the boxes. You did drill sergeant, you did this, you did, but you have no clue. Everybody hated him. Every soldier hated him.
Yeah.
even the first round was like, yeah, this dude, everybody wants to bandage ship on him, but he had made E7, and it was one of those things that, and then when I ended up to work, I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna bite me in the ass. But it was what, again, I was there for my soldiers, and I was their shield, so they kind of like, okay, well, at least we have him to fight this guy. So
does the military do any sort of like 360-degree? Like, do they get the perspectives from your subordinates or the people that answer to you when looking at your evaluations? You know what I'm asking?
They started to do 360 when I got out. Nate can answer that better because I don't know how far they went with it. I retired in 2016, so
okay.
Nate,
did they do that? Like, would they start soliciting feedback from the people that answer to you?
So in my position, because I was a first sergeant, which means I'm the top enlisted in the company, and I have a company commander, which is called the Command Climate Survey. So it's based off of that is where you get your retaliation or the people that don't like what you're doing. You either see that on a percentage base. It's kind of like Google where you just ask, but yeah, that process is a little, it's a little, I mean, it's a little weird just because it's a command climate survey. So it's basically it'll ask general questions like, have you ever, had a conversation with your command team that made you uncomfortable? And if it's a survey, so if you say yes, then there's an alternative to elaborate, and then you go into the elaboration. But so to answer your question, yes, in that aspect, it's a command climate survey. But when to go back to your previous question of have I ever had somebody that a superior that didn't like me, that was kind of, gunning for me, so to speak, I would say yes, that's always going to happen, but it happens because the Army specifically has an open door policy, and anybody can go into the sergeant major's office, who I work for, who is my raider, right? Well, technically he's not my raider, but my company commander is my raider, but I work for the sergeant major of the unit, and he has an open door policy. So anybody can go into him with a complaint, can go into him with their belly aching, whatever it is. It could be serious, it could be not be serious. So I've been in a position where I've had to answer for those accusations as well. And it's not comfortable, but again, it's part of the process. I don't disagree with it, but I also don't agree with it, because anybody with a complaint can come up to, and again, I was a first sergeant, and I went through some trials and tribulations, we'll call it, but it's called, the Marine calls it NJP, the Army calls it what's the term I'm thinking of, Jose? I was under investigation.
Oh, God, I know what you're talking about. It's not the IG.
It's an IG, yeah. Well, no, it's not. No, yeah, you're right. It's not.
At the lower level. God, I know what you're talking about. I cannot, for the life right there, and like, I know what you're talking about. I just cannot think of the term for it right now.
Yeah. But so I was under
60s for privates would, review their NCOs, and the NCOs review their section sergeants, and I don't know if they still do that. Do they still do that?
No, they don't. We don't do that. At least, no, not on the active duty side anymore. That's part of so part of the evaluation is rating your NCOs as far as from best to worst, but it's you can only rate one as the best, and then everybody else cannot be the best, which is a good thing. But get back.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I know what you're talking about. God, I can't. God, I wish I could. It's right there, and I know when I get.
So anyway, I was under investigation, and I was pulled. So because you're under investigation, and because that transpires, that whole action transpires, I was pulled out of my leadership position. which means I'm no longer in the position
Mhm.
that I was being rated in, and I'm assigned to do something else, which when you're in a leadership position, everything else is a demotion.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you go. So it's a demotion. So you go to that, and then during this is the worst part of that proceeding, is that although I'm being investigated by JAG, which is the Joint Advocate General, or Judge Advocate General. Yeah, they're the ones that handle all proceedings in the military, criminal and non-criminal. I'm being looked at as under investigation for non-criminal activity. I cannot go to JAG and form a defense team. So
Yeah.
I can't have somebody, a legal representation, say, again, everything's done in sworn statements. It's so
Yeah.
the sworn statements that are my word against someone else's. No legal team can say, well, you can't say that my client meant this when they said this, because you're misinterpreting what they said. And anyway, it's again, because it's non-criminal. It's all subjective to a legal team to read
Sure.
and review all of the documentation that's submitted, which is, in my opinion, super stressful for somebody that's in my position,
Scary.
which is,
That's scary.
yeah. Again, so my last deployment prior to being assigned to Fort Hood, I was under investigation for sexual harassment, which there was, again, for me to say, or for me, I'll say it right now, but for me to be subject to a sexual harassment investigation, like I'm not even attracted to this individual that is saying that I sexually harassed him. So like, how is that even possible? Number one. And again, semantics, and we could go into the definition of sexual harassment, but like, if I'm not physically, this is my mindset, if I'm not physically attracted to that individual, how can there be sexual harassment in general? And then like, then it boils down to, well, what did I say that was inappropriate? Like, and again, that's subject to interpretation, which, because it's not criminal, I can't have somebody, a legal representation, say, well, when my client said this, you can't say that you interpreted it as this, because that's not how they interpreted it, So it's it's a big mess, number one, and it was super stressful for me, because that whole time was uh at the same time this was all going on, I needed to submit a packet to retire, and I could not submit a packet to retire because I was under investigation. And if I was
And
under
your intent was
investigation,
always to retire at that time.
yeah, yeah. And if I was, well, yes and no, but if I was under investigation, then again, I can't submit my packet to retire. But at the same time, let's also look at it in a very weird context. As soon as I was told I was found to not be at fault of any misdoings, I didn't get a GOMAR, none of that stuff, or a general letter of reprimand is what's called the GOMAR, from a general officer, which would be a general, which is what you don't want. Technically, that's a career ender for anybody, right?
So you were acquitted. Like in civilian terms,
Correct.
you were
Yeah,
acquitted.
I was acquitted. And then as soon as I was acquitted, I was offered a promotion. But if I'm offered a promotion, and Jose, you can attest to this, if you're a sergeant major, you can find yourself standing in front of 300 people and saying something that hopefully you think is motivating to them.
Yeah.
If one person out of that 300, or let's say it's 500, let's say it's 1,000, if one person thinks that what you're saying is offensive, that's all that it takes.
Yeah, it's a crazy. I mean, I was a sharp, and I was a victim advocate, and I dealing with that stuff. It's tricky because I would tell the people when I would do my class that you have the reasonable person standard, and if 9 out of 10 people look at you and go, yeah, that doesn't seem offensive, then in the majority of people in this world are not going to find it offensive. But the problem is that, especially when it comes to female to male, the moment a female says something, boy, you as a male, you're the shit starts rolling downhill fast, and it's hard to shield yourself and to sit down, because even when you are, like Nate, as you said, was acquitted, the stigma's there because you're removed, you're taken out, and everybody's like, oh, you got
Publicly, yeah.
all the gossip, and so the stain is on you. Even when you get cleared, there's always those handful of people that are like, oh well, he just he just got lucky, got away with it. They believe what they believe regardless. And so and I will tell you, having to deal with it. I've been on both sides, and I've been with real victims, and then I've been with people who take something small, like, oh, your hair looks nice today. Oh, he was hitting on me. He was sexually harassing me. What do you mean? He liked your haircut. A reasonable person would be like, hey, just gave you a compliment. But, for some of these people, they're out there to just take people down. And it's crazy. I had a female sergeant major. She was like that. And when I told her the reasonable person standard, she's like, oh, so you're saying it doesn't matter what I feel? I'm not saying it doesn't matter what you feel. But what you feel and what is reality are two different things. And we have to separate emotion from fact. Oh, everybody in the room was like, oh shit, here we go. We're gonna be here for about 3 hours. We were there in my class an hour, just trying to debate with me. And even the female sharp that was there with me was like, you're not listening. You are literally taking an individual, your personal feelings, your personal view, and trying to say this is the way it is, and it's not. That's not how.
And project it on others. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a tricky. It is. And getting into sharp was probably one of the best things I learned, because when my son went to college, I basically taught him the course and said, hey, don't do this. And I gave him, hey, if girl's drinking, the moment she has one drink, she can't give you, she cannot agree to anything. It's no consent. So you need to walk her home, and we'll pick it up where we're left off tomorrow. And so much of this, and he was just like that. I didn't really realize what, a lot of this stuff, and it helped him. But it was a good experience for me to see it firsthand, because I was like, wow, you could get caught up pretty quick, and it doesn't take much. And especially, when we're and going through my son went to school, and he graduated 2016. So that was when we were hitting that big woke feminist, hear me roar type time frame. I was like, this is not the time to get caught up, because they are going to they're going to destroy your life, whether it's valid or not. And it's crazy, because you had like people like Oprah and them defending Harvey Weinstein and saying, Rose McGowan, you're so stupid. Then 10 years later, oh well, maybe she was right, but nobody ever apologized to her, because when she said it in 2010, it was like, oh, you're stupid. And then 2016, all of a sudden, and I told my son the world is retroactive right now, and they will come back and get you. They will come back, something you did 10 years ago when you were immature and stupid, try to use it against you, which is crazy. But but I feel for Nate, because I've watched guys have to fight for their lives, sit there and like stress, because like this girl's like, well, you said my hair looks nice. Really? That's your complaint. That's what you're upset. He sexualized me because he said I was pretty. What?
Yeah.
And
no, I appreciate having a sexual harassment representation like yourself, but I don't believe that's the norm across the Army. And that's the bad thing, is because, like you said, like, let's the 9 out of 10 general factor, like, no, that doesn't exist. And I say that because I was at Fort Hood, and it was after the whole everything that happened. So I understand the everything that, and I was also overseas, so I understand the climate of where I was and what was going on. But at the same time, it's just like, again, to a normal human being, like, if that really offends you, like, that is something on the level, right? Like on the level of adults, and we're all adults because we all joined the army, right? On the level of adults, you should be able to talk to the individual that said whatever made you feel offended, and if they do it again, then it's not a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
Like, like professional courtesy should exist.
Yeah.
And there should be a level of professional courtesy to where, if what is being said is questionable, then you wait until it happens again, but only after you've addressed it, right? And then if it happens again, then especially, again, I'm a first sergeant of the company. Like, I feel like I have a personal relationship with everybody in the company. So if you feel like, and I know you heard first sergeant say this before, or manager say this before, like, I want you to come to me with your problems. I want you to feel like you can have a conversation with me about, one, your problems, and two, if you have other things that you want to talk about, not necessarily your problems, but I'm going to have a personal conversation with each and every one of you to get to know you, and who you have two kids, one kid, you're married, you're not married, to get an understanding between the two of us of who you really are, and like, if we're establishing that, and then again you feel like you can't come to me and tell me that you something that I said, a word or two words combined, offended you, then, like, uh, I don't know. There's a level of professionalism that exists there, and that I appreciate when someone can say, you know, and again, I'm not going to say, no, you're fucking wrong. Like, I didn't, that's not acknowledge. It'll be like, I'll acknowledge what I said. Yes, I did say that. And I can see how you would interpret that way, but that's not how I meant it. And I apologize. And moving forward, I'll avoid going in that direction again, for sure. Like that, because that's not how I meant it. Like, I feel like when you hear that explanation, it's like, yeah, that's reassuring. Like, okay, I get that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the
I
world
hope,
we live in.
Wally, I know.
It is.
So where are we headed to next, Nate?
We can talk about let's talk about the hockey tournament. You want to talk about that,
Oh,
Wally? Or you gotta
kind of do,
go?
buddy, but it's midnight and I'm beat. But let me say this: I was pretty upset. I'm not a huge hockey guy. I obviously live in the Northeast. Hockey's kind of big up in my neck of the woods. That game took place in Boston. Holy cow! It's been a while since I've seen the that place rocking like that. Did you watch the game, Nate?
Were you down there, Wally?
I was not. I wish I was. I know I should have been.
You should have
I
been, man.
regret.
That's literally it's a
Hard. It's
2 hour
hard for me
drive.
to.
I get it.
It's hard for me to pick up and go to a game on a Thursday night. Like, it's just not
With
my
two kids,
lifestyle
yeah.
anymore. Two
I guess
kids.
I
I
guess
got a
I
full
guess
time
I have
job.
to
It's
understand, yeah, you got to be a parent first. I guess.
two relatively young kids. But I tell you what, it got me excited. Like, for an all-star game, let's call it what it was. This wasn't like a national
Yeah.
tournament. You're not going to get gold medal. This isn't any World Cup. This is the All-Star game, which contrasted with what the NBA, that mess that was the NBA All-Star game. Like,
Right.
they got both Canada and the USA fucking hating each other. Like, Canada booed
Yeah.
us. They booed us. They booed our national anthem. Enough so that the Kachucks, like, I get to tell you, like, I was sitting at the draft in Concord with a bunch of my buddies. We were literally chanting USA. Can't come that second fight. Because like, what the fuck? Fired up. And I got to give Boston fans credit for a fan base that is shit on as much as our fan base is. Boy, there was not a whole lot of booing on the Canadian anthem yesterday. So I'll give Boston credit for that. And I don't think we don't get a lot of it. It was good hockey. I enjoyed watching it. It was riveting. It brought eyes. Like, I had fun.
Yeah, it was a really good game. It was fun to watch. I mean, there was a couple of shots in overtime USA that if 2 inches here and
I
they
know.
go home the winner, So, but yeah, it was nasty. It was so contrast to what the NBA is, is just dying. It's dying a death, slow death, and the clown show that they were putting on.
Don't
And then
you say it. Don't you say it.
the whole thing with the LeBron thing is like, and everybody was pissed. And it's like, you sit there and you're like, then you watch the hockey. And these are, the best
Yeah.
of out there, scrap and fight and punching. They were checking, they were knocking each other down. They were playing like it was the Stanley Cup.
The
And
game started with 3 straight fights.
yeah,
The first game. How awesome was that?
you go back to the first one where the USA, it was the same way, just nasty, physical. But if you're a hockey fan, you're like, this is what I came to see. These guys, those guys cared. Those guys were like, I care, and I want to put out the best product possible. And it's crazy because I was like, I watched, me and my son were texting back and forth, and I was like, I thought Canada was going to win in the third period because they were just peppering our goalie, but he was doing a good job. And then we in overtime came out aggressive. We're just inches off, and then they got that, that just nice play. They do have better skill players than us, as far as
Yes,
score.
they do.
And
but it's getting closer. It's getting closer. Are you a hockey fan, Jose? Are you?
I do. I'm a Penguins fan, so I enjoy hockey, and it's like I used to go to hockey games all the time. There's not a hockey team here I'd go all the time, at least not here in San Antonio. And it's fun to watch, and it's intense. And I was just like, and me and my son are going back, like, oh my God, it was so crazy. But when Canada won, I was like, oh fuck,
Yeah, I was upset the Canada won. Of course, most of us Americans should be, but what I thought was more telling about that was, I don't know if you guys listen to or know who PK Subban is. He was one of the announcers at halftime, not an announcer on the game, but
played for the Canadiens for years.
Yes, he did. He played in the NHL, played for the Canadiens. He's
very good.
He was very vocal. Yeah, he was very vocal about. So I think it was First Take. They asked him about should the NBA what can the NBA learn from the NHL and this whole process? And this was also between the games, the games between Canada and USA, in Canada, and then the one that was in Boston.
Yeah.
And his response was very articulate, because he basically, what we all know, he said it, like, hockey is a blue collar sport. Like, these guys that are playing hockey, they go out there and they put their body on the line every day. That's not to, and he even said, that's not to say that any NFL or NBA players don't do that, but the hockey guys, they go out there and they play hurt, they play injured, they understand the money that they're earning, and they go out there, and if they're able to get on the ice, put skates on and skate, they will go out there and they'll put their body on the line. And he said that translates to essentially their pride. And then that brings pride to their team. And then that also brings pride to the league. And that whole concept, it brought about everything that we saw on TV, the way that I didn't even, before this even was happening, I had no idea what the Four Nations tournament was. Like, I'll be honest, I am a casual hockey fan. I love watching hockey, especially while we're in Texas and I can go into an arena where there's ice and it's 65 degrees. Like, that's great. Like, I want to be able to go and watch, and hockey is entertaining to watch. I like to see fights, which is another reason why those first three, in the first 9 seconds, 3 fights, like, that is what I want to see. One from America against anybody that boos our anthem, absolutely. So some sort of pride, absolutely. And I know that each one of those hockey players, that they amplify that, like, that is them to the core. And that's the reason why they were playing. And the one thing that I take away from what PK Subban was saying is that it's just, we're the NFL and the NBA, they're paying these players hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And are they willing to put their body on the line? I would say, just in layman's terms, if our best players that are getting the highest amount of money don't want to participate in a dunk contest, there's no physical contact. That's just being physical in general. If they don't want to participate in a dunk contest, then we already understand where the pride is, and we already understand where that sense of I'm going to go out and lay it on the line for the fans. We already understand where that is on the NFL side and the NBA side, just because the NFL is kind of taken. There's never really been a Pro Bowl, so to speak, and the Pro Bowl is gone, and now the NBA All-Star game, the way that it is, I hope it changes, but I really feel like what PK Subban was getting at was just those players will go out there and lace those skates up, whether they're hurt or injured, and they will put it on the line because of specifically the dollar amount of the check that they're given to do that. And I love that fact about the NHL in general. And then that whole the whole thing about the USA versus Canada, of course, who can't get on board with that? I mean, that's just
I would say with the NFL is a little different than the NBA because your shelf life's a little shorter. So to protect yourself from injury, I can understand the NFL. Even back when they were still in pads, not going all out, because I get it. Who wants to get hurt in a Pro Bowl and then your career is altered because you only have a small window. The NBA guys, I mean, once Kobe left, that was the last guy that was competitive. He was the last guy that was like, "Hey, I want to win this, and I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna check the best guy, and I'm gonna, these guys now. I mean, nobody plays 82 games anymore. So the NBA, you're looking at guys who are making 20 million, $30 million a year, and they're not, not even with LeBron. And I mean, when you get a max contract, those guys are making an insane amount of money, and they're playing 60 games a year and talking about, oh, I need to rest my body. Well, I thought you're bigger, faster, stronger. I thought they were better athletes. Well, how these guys back there that were plumbers smoking cigars can play games and beating the hell out of each other, but you guys can't play where you can't even touch each other. You know what I mean? And oh, by the way, you have testosterone replacement therapy, you have steroids, you have weight rooms, you have massage, you're flying on private planes. Kareem was flying and coach with the rest of us, and now you got these guys flying on private planes. They're complaining, it's like, come on, dude, you can't be better, but yet you can't play 70. You can't even play 75 games. You can't. I don't want to go all out All-Star team. I don't.
So my argument to that would be like it is such a big business now. They've become so successful that a guy's ankle or a guy's knee could be a big deal, like hundreds of millions of dollars. The NBA brings in huge money, and again, I probably agree with you, but I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. In that, if somebody gets hurt in a game like the NBA All-Star game, that's a